Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Elite Aria Media Digest for May of 2023. So, as always, I'm going to go through all the stuff that I finished in May of 2023, and there's not that many this time, I guess. I'd said there's one that's really long, and the rest are a lot shorter. So I guess we'll see. My prediction is that this will probably be pretty long. I know the last few times, I've always said that it's going to be short, but this time I think it's going to be long. But let's go straight into it. The first thing is Dr. Stone. So this was recommended by Miller the Killer, and he recommended to, I think split it at episode 17 or something, and I wanted none of that. All right, I wanted to watch it straight away. So I watched seasons 1 and 2 and the special episode. This is an anime. There's 36 episodes. I guess of what I watched, there's 36, and I started on the 15th of May and I finished on the 25th of May. There's a season 3 that's currently airing, which I haven't started, and I also didn't want to include on this just because it's currently airing. But maybe one day I'll watch that too. But overall thoughts. This is a 4 out of 5. So this show is an absolute mess, is I guess how I would describe it. I if How do I even say this? I guess if I wasn't watching this, if this wasn't part of my media digest, I think I would have. I know that I would have stopped at episode 2. I was not enjoying those first 2 episodes for a variety of reasons. I'm sure we'll go over. But overall, this is definitely 4 out of 5. It. I don't know if it got better over time. I think it stayed the same over time, but my understanding of what the show is and what I would enjoy from it, I guess, improved over time. But let me see. Overall thoughts. So, absolute mess. Fair enough. The power of science. That's a big thing from this. It just shows firstly, how powerful science is, and how I don't know. It just makes modern civilization feel so special, which is a fun thing to have in a show. It's it's also very refreshing to see a show, especially an anime, like a Japanese anime, which doesn't pander to anything spiritual, religious, or we'll never get it, we'll never know for sure, or we'll never get an answer. This show always feels like it's very there's an answer for everything, and you don't have to revert to some spiritual explanation, which I like quite a lot. I guess another point, overall thought, is that this show I think will stick with me forever. It feels like it has a very defined memory. There's a lot of shows that I watch are kind of generic, like Gamers, for instance, and I guess it's the immediate thing that comes to mind. But stuff like that, where I'm like, this is a show I watched. It was fine. I'll never watch it again, and it'll never cross my mind again. Dr. Stone has it's very unique, but I don't know how to quite explain why unique it is, or why it's so unique, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. But obviously it's going to stick with me forever. Another overall thought is that it's very frustrating to watch. So let me see what I wrote here. I said the show answers questions too late, or rather the experience of watching through the first time is very poor and frustrating, but eventually you do get the answers to the things you want, but it just takes too long to get there. So the example I wrote is that the whole time I'm wondering, why don't they just make more nitric acid? The whole time. Because obviously the nitric acid is the miracle thing, and it's the whole reason they're fighting over this war in the end. And they never address it until right at the end of season 2, I think, where Hyoga tells Senku that he knows that Senku probably could make this nitric acid, but it could take a long time, and that'd be an issue and everything. But it's things like that where it's this. I immediately have this question when I'm watching, and I think, okay, they're never going to address this, but it takes ages and ages and ages, and they finally address these simple things. So that's a very frustrating thing, and I have a bunch of frustrations. I guess the way I've structured this Dr. Stone thing is because I have a lot of notes on this. Overall thoughts here, which is what I'm going over. Then I have a pre-watching thing, then initial impressions, frustrations. Essentially, I have a nice structure like that. So yeah, my last overall thought is about how it's a kind of a general point, I guess, which is about how I like things in general. The expectations when you go in to watch something, I think frame how I view something in terms of positive or negative. So I wasn't sure what to expect when I watched this. I knew that there's Dr. Stone. I think he's a scientist or something. I'm assuming it has something to do with alchemy. I didn't know if it was actually grounded in science or whatever. But I really didn't know what I was expecting. So I was just judging by what I knew about it, maybe I was expecting something more serious or grounded, but what you really get is kind of something more anime-like and um, more tropey and more comedic and stuff, and less grounded, um, which is kind of a weird thing to. It's I don't know. It's not something that appeals to me because it wasn't what I was expecting. Like if I was expecting this to be a comedy, for instance, then I'm sure I would like it a lot better from the start. But I guess the point of me bringing this up is that I guess I wanted to bring this up as a general point because it also ties into what I thought about Arcane, where Arcane presents itself as something real, something initially that it seems very clever and interesting to watch, but um, as time goes on, I think the opposite happens, where you start seeing it as something that's trying to be clever. Um, and the fact that it's trying to be clever makes it feel worse. Whereas for Dr. Stone, it starts off as, say, not trying. It doesn't seem like it's trying to be clever or anything like that. It doesn't seem like it's trying to be serious or grounded, which are things that I generally like. But now that I know what Dr. Stone is in my mind, I really like it for what it is, I guess I would say. Um, so I don't know. So I guess pre-watching. So I had a decision to make when I started watching this, which is, do I watch it in the dub or the sub? So I had arguments for both. I know that if I watch the dub, then I can watch Blind Wave's reactions to it. But I know that if I watch the sub, then I can watch season 3 as it's like airing live or whatever, because I'm sure that's like ahead of the dub or something. And also I could probably honor Miller, the person who recommended this, because I'm sure he's probably watching the sub. But maybe he's not. Maybe he's watched in the dub. That'd be crazy. But I watched the sub, and then I also watched the Blind Wave reactions in the dub, and I think I like both versions like perfectly. The sub was great, and also watching the Blind Wave reactions, I thought the dub was really great as well. So I feel like this is one of those with a really good dub, and it sounded like there was a lot of crossover with My Hero Academia, their dubcast, which is probably the best dubcast I've ever seen. So I'm sure it's great. But yeah, I guess now we'll go over a bunch of initial impressions. The first was what I said before, which is I definitely would have absolutely dropped this in 2 episodes if not for the digest. So this is a note directly from when I was watching episode 2, because I kept notes as I was watching. I said, this episode, for episode 2, has definitely not sold me on the show. It's very generic. The mystery box is boring because there's no hints or anything whatsoever to build the theories around even the show itself, and even the show itself seems inconsistent with the rules, with the chopped limbs having crust around them. I don't like the 2 characters. The animation is pretty mid. Some music is good and some directing is good. So I guess that was my initial impression of episode 2. I just thought it was inconsistent, uninteresting. The mystery seemed like it was trying to make you interested, but had nothing for you to speculate on. I thought it was very boring, and I would have dropped it right there, but I did. I'm glad I stuck with it. Another initial impression is that for some reason there's a Crunchyroll logo that's like integrated with the show. I don't know why, but it's funny to see that. Like really cool to see it, I guess, as well. Like maybe Crunchyroll funded this or something, or I have no idea. Another initial impression from back when I was starting to watch, I wrote that the world is frozen by green lights, and only humans seem to be frozen, but I guess now we know that also the birds were frozen. But this made me raise the question of, I wonder if pregnant babies are also frozen, and if that is the case, then I guess that would settle the abortion debate of like whether like fetuses are humans or whatever. I don't know, it's just an interesting thing. I wonder what that would mean. And also aliens, they're aliens. Is that my theory? But I don't know. I have a whole theory section we'll talk about. Another initial impression, I wonder if the author studied chemistry, because like a lot of the stuff here is quite detailed, and like it's not impossible. You could definitely look this up with the layman understanding, but it's I don't know, it makes me feel like the author's quite informed on the things he's saying. He says, and I guess the show conveys things with confidence, so I don't question the author or anything. Another thing is that the music carries the show at points. I think the music is kind of like punching above the pay grade of the show. Like you got the animation and the production and the story and the writing and the characters on one level, and then you've got the music, which is like like you'd expect for a much higher quality show than this is. Tsukasa feels like the type of... Yeah, I guess this is just an initial impression I had, which is that initially when I met Tsukasa, I thought that he was going to be set up as this incredibly strong person you get on your side, only to eventually have the story sacrifice him to set up an even stronger antagonist. But clearly that wasn't the case at all. I liked Senku's backstory, his dad fostering his love for science and giving him the idea that he can do what he wants if he puts his mind to it. I thought that was great. And then I said that I can see a path for this show being good. So the beginning of episode 5, where Senku is dead, and I wrote Brawn Man, which would be Taiju, is throwing the rock to fight Strong Man, who is Tsukasa, is very engaging. It's dumb, and it's not the intelligent mystery box or civilization building show that I was hoping for, but it's at least engaging in a Keijo-like way. So Keijo is another anime where it's ridiculously dumb, and I love it for just how engaging it is. So I feel like there's similarities there early on with Dr. Stone. And yeah, I wrote that the music punches way above its pay grade. Now, I have a bunch of frustrations with this show. The number one is that I wish this was less quirky and anime tropey. So I think this would be a really great show if it was much more grounded. I also don't know what I would compare it to in terms of groundedness, like the ideal. I like the thing that comes to mind is Death Note, but even Death Note is quite a bit quirky at times. But I feel like that's the kind of vibe I want to go for. Not even the vibe in terms of like the tone of the show or anything, but the level of groundedness that's going on. I would have liked to see something more like that, I guess. Oh boy, then I wrote. Oh, the scene, basically they have this fighting arc that I hated. I wrote that goddamn, this fighting arc sucks. Please go back to science. So early on in season 1, they have this basically a tournament within the village that Senku goes to, and I thought that was terrible. One of the worst fighting arcs I've ever seen. And I got so frustrated when initially what's her name? Gorilla Girl. I'm also really bad with names with this. I watched this pretty quickly. But when she gets sent away because one of the short man basically tells her, "Oh, Suika is at the river. She's gonna drown if you don't go save her." And obviously it's like a plan to like get them out of the tournament. But she even acknowledges that this is probably a plan. But I have to go anyway, and I'm just so frustrated watching this. I'm like, why is this plot point included here? I don't like this at all. The girl, her sister, who has pneumonia, she's coughing, but she only coughs when it's plot relevant, to kind of break up an argument or end a scene or something. I find that pretty annoying. The show, and yeah, I guess the show shouldn't do mysteries. I think the show completely fails at any mysteries it tries to do. And I said that this is because there's no fun in guessing, because guessing is either impossible, because there's just not enough information, or the information is obscured by facts that are physically in the show, but it's impossible to determine if they're facts or if they're just mistakes or unimportant anime flourishes. I don't have any particular examples for this. It just happened frequently throughout the show, and it annoyed me. Then I have a whole problem with Tsukasa wanting to destroy their village. So he immediately sends people to go to this uncivilized village and destroy them, basically. And I don't know why. Like, why not approach them peacefully and at least find information about what they are and what's going on and try and negotiate or something, but he doesn't. And I think Tsukasa's character, it's interesting because I do like him. I have a tier list that I'll do at the end of this section that I'll show what I put him as, but I do like him, but he's like almost a good character, like a very good character, but he's not quite. Like I said that I like the twist with Tsukasa's sister, but I'm not sure how well it ties in with the resolution of their conflict with the science village. So if I'm understanding correctly, Tsukasa believes himself to be living in a world of chance, so the revival fluid may run out, society might collapse, etc., etc. So he's choosing which lives to save so that he can, live, have humans live great in the future, or to have a good human society. But at the same time, I don't understand how this, framing of his worldview is in any way opposed to having Senku advance science. I don't know. To me, it just makes no sense. You can have two things at the same time. Banish Senku far away, let him do his science stuff, bring back everyone together. I just don't understand. And I'm sure that's not the only thing that bothers me about him, but it's small things like this from you're so close to having an interesting character, but you just make it very confusing in the last 20% or something. I don't know. Oh goddamn, more frustrations. The scene. So initially, when Hyoga and his minions, they end up going to the village to assess it and kind of attack them. And that's the reveal that our villagers have katanas, and they come out swinging, and they disarm all the enemies, and they beat Hyoga basically with Gen's help. I think Gen, that was his name. Gen's help, by chopping off his attachment for his spinny weapon. And they don't kill them or capture them or anything. It's so unbelievably frustrating, where um, I just hate it. I hate it so much. It's like you have this chance to prevent all of this future conflict, but you don't do it, and I don't know why. I guess now I know that. Like, I guess at this point, I absolutely would have dropped the show again. This is like another point where I'm like, this is extreme frustration. Where I'm like, please, please, just capture this. You don't have to kill him. I get it. You don't want to kill him or whatever because it's like a kids show or something. I don't know. Just please don't. At least just capture him. But no, they let him get away. It's so annoying. Um, but yeah, I guess I've also realized at this point that no one will ever die in this show, which is a perfectly fine thing. It's just a different expectation of what I was having. Because obviously the first conflict you run into is that, oh no, Senku's dead. But obviously he's not dead, and you know that as like a anime watcher. But it like sets you up to think, okay, maybe people will die in this show. Um, and then no one ever does. Like even at the end, Tsukasa doesn't die. He's like frozen away, which I thought was cool, but yeah, no one really dies except for these damn three stooges that Hyoga was with, who get kicked off the pole and die because of sulfur. So that's really interesting. Um, anyway, I only got a few more, and then we'll talk about all the great things. All right, so Tsukasa's more on Tsukasa's motivation. So I wrote that I wonder what the wider fandom thinks of him. Yeah, I guess because he's interesting. He portrays, or the story portrays him as a sympathetic villain, I guess, where it's like kind of like Thanos, where you can hopefully understand what he's doing. Um, he's trying to create. He's trying to select the. I guess this is before the reveal of his sister and all of his like motivations there of trying to save her. He's trying to create a world which isn't burdened by the bad of the old world, by all the adults and stuff. He wants to create a new world full of these young people who have bright ideals and can shape the world to be better than it was before. Yeah, so I guess going back to the point here, I said I wonder what the wider fandom thinks about him. I could imagine people thinking he's like a Thanos when he's kind of right in his ideals, but like going about it the wrong way or something. But if you even think about his plan for even a second, it's just obviously brain dead and has he's just an idiot with a limited imagination, basically. So I don't know. I just don't like his plan at all. Tsukasa could definitely take. Yeah, I guess another thing about the believability of all this is that Tsukasa definitely 100%, no doubt in my mind, that if he went to the village alone, he could easily wipe out the entire village and everyone in it with zero resistance, and no one would be able to take him. And he could solve this entire conflict without issue. That's another thing. And is there really no way to make the bat acid without the cave? He made a cell phone. He can absolutely like the story gives me everything in the story and all the great things that Senku has done implies that he could easily make whatever miracle fluid this is, right? But for some convenience reason, he can't. So I don't know. It's just frustrating. But now for the great things, the great moments in this amazing Doctor Stone anime. All right. First thing, this is just a list of great things. All right. To make this a 4 out of 5. First is all the way at the beginning. So when he made the pulley system to lift the tree off of Gorilla Girl, I thought that was really awesome. I got this feeling of like, hell yeah, humanity, this is our science, show this primitive girl what the amazing technology of modern society has achieved. And you get that feeling throughout. Another amazing scene is the light bulb scene, which I kind of got emotional about, where Senku is talking about how, like, in our world, we conquered the night. We have lights at all times during the day and night. It just makes me proud to be a human. We've achieved such great things. And that's what Dr. Stone really excels at, I think. Are moments like that. The reveal that Senku made the cola for Gen, I thought that was the sickest thing ever. What a moment. Like, you don't I didn't expect it, at least, but it's awesome. It says a lot about Senku as a person. The chieftain crying when, I think, Yuri or something, that was the name, his daughter is healthy again. That was really cute. The fact that, like, we have this flashback with Senku's dad, who I kind of liked his backstory episodes. They were okay. But I liked in those backstory episodes where Senku's dad is basically like, oh, Senku, I know you're not watching this, but anyway, blah, and he gives him like a message over the press conference, and Senku is watching, and it's like, oh, how cute, he does like his dad. Suika conquering her fuzzy sickness, I thought that was really cool, and Senku, I think it was Senku, talking about how it's the fuzzy sickness isn't even a disability in Senku's world because they have glasses. Awesome. I guess talking about the relationship between Senku and his dad, the fact that he is not his biological son is also an amazing small detail that I thought was really cool. the magma character stuff in the cave where he goes to save Senku without like he pushes Senku out of the way basically, but then puts on this like tough act of not wanting to help them and so that they could kill him and save themselves. So that was great. Says a lot about magma. The framing the audio. So Senku's dad leaves a recording after he's dead in his grave, and just the way that the show frames that audio as him speaking to Senku from heaven, I thought that was really awesome. All the wonders of the modern entertainment, like that scene where it's like flashing and showing like a switch and all that. And to me, when you see Goku, I'm like, oh my god, that's Goku. That's my childhood right there. Look at that. I thought that was awesome. Taiju, when he is reintroduced, I think at the end of season 1 or maybe beginning of season 2, and he starts taking all the punches from Nikki. I thought that was the sickest shit ever. Initially I didn't like that trope, or not that trope, but that like character thing about him not attacking, but just taking punches. I didn't like that initially, but as the show went on, I loved it. And in that final fight where he's like, has that shield and he can actually take all the hits, I thought that was really awesome. I love how when Homura is in prison, she still has ramen. I thought that was cool. I love when Chrome is in prison and in the Tsukasa Empire, and the police officer guy like goes up to him and thinks that he is using the wood to make the fire. That's not the part I like. I like the fact that he starts laughing at that, and then he like corrects himself, and it's like, oh no, I shouldn't laugh at these primitive people. They're just trying their best. And I'm like, oh, that's so funny. He does that a few times. I thought that was a great gag. Yuzuriha, I thought she was an absolute legend when you get the reveal that she's like rebuilding all the rock people, one rock at a time. That was awesome. Jeez, I have so many random notes here. So the hearing guy, the guy who like the bow and arrow who can hear really well. I liked his backstory about like how when he was awoken, he was like saddened by what Tsukasa was doing, but he like stayed behind to kind of try and prevent all the people from killing each other. That was great. Hyoga, during the final fight, the best moment, it's not the tank, it's not the airplanes at the end or anything. It's when Tsukasa and Hyoga show up, and it's like this awesome music, and it's like, oh my god, the two actual villains have shown up. But I very much wish that was a bigger moment, because it's really cool for me as like a watcher for the first time seeing them show up. But it's only cool because I was expecting after they showed up to see the reactions of like all of the people of this village who have heard so much about the great Tsukasa and this villainous leader on the other side of the conflict, and we don't see any of their reactions. They don't go, is that Tsukasa or anything? We don't get anything like that, which is very disappointing. But it was cool for me to see it, I guess. I just wish I saw more reactions. Senku throwing the birds at Hyoga during their like fight for like 2 seconds. I thought that was awesome. And the one during that fight with Tsukasa, Senku, and Hyoga when they're fighting, and you get this one like distant panning shot with like really cool animation of Tsukasa and Hyoga fighting each other. It is the best animation in this whole show so far. I thought it was really cool. Like a one moment of Sakuga, I guess, really cool. And in the finale, of season 2, I liked when Tsukasa and Senku were talking, and I guess what I really liked about it is the fact that Tsukasa obviously passes out or dies while he's being frozen, but Senku keeps talking. And Senku knows that Tsukasa is gone, but he keeps talking to kind of cope with it, and instead of breaking down or admitting any emotional like defeat or anything, he keeps talking to kind of mask away the sadness. Great. So that's it. Those are my great moments. Now there's 2 really special moments that truly elevate. These are 5 out of 5 moments. These are moments where I am like, unbelievable. I can't believe how good the show is. All right. So the first one is when Senku gives Homura the cotton candy, basically. Now it's a bit, I can't explain why this works so well to me. I have written a thing here which I'm going to read out, but I don't think this does it justice for why it works. Like, I think what I'm trying to express, what I have expressed here is kind of touching at the surface of why this works so well for me. But so I said, out of nowhere, Dr. Stone hit on something really amazing. So Senku giving Homura the cotton candy. Like, sure, it gives him a strategic advantage, but at the same time, it's just a cool human gesture of remember the good old days. We might be fighting now, but we're all still human. It kind of reminds me of the day that everyone started singing on Christmas Eve during World War I. So I said that I don't even know if this is even the message that the show was trying to convey, but it's so perfect. So yeah, I really don't think that this scene was meant to be as poignant and hit me as emotionally as it did. But it was perfect either way. So I think this is one of my like key examples going forward, maybe that I'll give of how the author intention doesn't matter at all. So I don't know. But yeah, it portrays Senku was a really, really great guy. I don't think I've quite captured it well in this note, but this is one of those fundamental things that makes a character really special to me. It's small things like this that make watching a show you generally don't like worth it. And the other example I gave is in Spy Family. There's a scene where there's a 10 out of 10 scene that comes out of Spy Family out of nowhere, with Anya and Bond, when Bond breaks her stuffed toy. I talked about it in the digest back then, but this moment of Senku giving Homura the cotton candy is one of those great moments. It is something to do with like that World War One thing about like the two opposing armies coming together on Christmas Eve to sing a song. But it's something deeper than that. I can't really quite touch on it, but it really got to me emotionally. But the best scene, the most amazing thing out of like this show is done out of nowhere. I couldn't believe it. Is this scene right here in the background? All right. So we are getting throughout the show. We get this stupid song that I hate so much by Lillian Weinberg. Right. It's the most out of place, cringeworthy, trying to tug on your heartstrings in a cringeworthy way that doesn't match the voice actor at all. It's like a completely different person is singing it. It comes out of nowhere. It's terrible. And I hated it every time they played it, and it made me cry out of nowhere, which I couldn't believe it. I was in shock that I was crying for this damn stupid song that I thought was so cringeworthy up until now. So, let me see. So, yeah, the stupid song I thought was so cringe, made me cry out of nowhere. Let me try and recap this story without reading this note. So basically, you've got Nikki here, all right? She hears this song over the radio, and she thinks back to how when she was high school, she wasn't exactly accepted by her peers, and she felt kind of out of place and bullied in a way, and you can see she's like beat up here, but maybe that was from her martial arts training. I don't really remember, but basically she would go home, and her comfort and the way that she would feel better about her life would be to just lie on her bed and listen to this music by Lillian Weinberg. And because of that, and because of just the happiness and normalcy and like the constant that was in her life, she felt she's forever grateful for Lillian, and her music especially. So that really got to me, because I'm like, man, I can relate to that, and that's like a very like there are some things in my life where I will forever be thankful, and if I could ever do something to repay those people, I absolutely would. But yeah, let me read this note. So yeah, the small story of Lillian Weinberg saving Nikki from the tough times at school. So when she hears the song, she remembers listening to it when she was crying on her bed, and how she will forever be thankful for Lillian and her songs. It's so amazing. To her, Lillian's music is something that has given her so much joy, happiness, and a place to retreat to in trying times that she would do anything to repay her in a heartbeat. And for me, it's probably things like, I have two examples here which are ridiculous, but I'm sure there's others. But the game Flife, like that has given me countless hours of joy, and just it's like a thing that's been a constant throughout my life that I enjoy so much. And I guess another thing would be something that has provided me with countless hours of entertainment and been there for me to maintain like a kind of consistency in my life when I'm going through different issues and stuff, is the reaction channel Blind Wave, right? Watching their videos as well. So I don't know, there's things like that where I'm like, man, this dumb scene and this dumb show with cringe music and everything got to me out of nowhere, and I love this character now so much, and it's amazing. So, Dr. Stone, pretty good. Pretty amazing sometimes, I would say. But I don't expect the show to ever do anything like this again, but man, the one time it did it was worth it. I'm so glad I watched it just for this scene. Anyway, now I have some notes for theorizing. So obviously there's a bunch of stuff going on here, so let's see what I wrote. These are like a bunch of thoughts I had while watching, so I guess they'll progressively get better and more informed as they go on, and because initially I was I had no idea what was going on. So interesting that everyone is frozen solid. You can even see when their arms are chopped off. But when they de-thaw, it's under the outer crust that de-thaws. So yeah, initially I was under the impression that everyone inside of the statues is like human tissue, and the outside is just a crust, like a stone crust. But I guess what you get revealed later on is that they literally are made of stone, like fully enclosed and everything. And when they get like the miracle fluid or acid or really strong nitric, whatever, all that does is erode the outer crust, which has been weakened over these thousands of years, and destroying the outer crust will like crumble the entire structure and turn back into human. So I guess that's interesting. Because yeah, my first impression was, if it's that easy to like destroy the outer shell and that's it, why don't you just drill into it? Which I still think is a thing they should have done, like narratively. This is one of those. It brings back to the initial issue I had before, which is that Doctor Stone, it has these issues where I'm like, why can't you do this? Why can't you do this? And they just don't address it until way later on, where I've completely forgotten about it. So one of those things was like, initially, we don't know what's going on with the crust. We can only assume that it's just the outer crust that's like hardened, because, you know, that's all we've ever seen. When they're undone, the outer crust comes undone, and there's just humans inside. So why don't they just try and drill? Or why don't they give a reason for why they can't try and drill into it, you know? It's like the obvious thing you would do in that situation, and the show doesn't address it at all. So I don't know, that frustrates me. But anyway. This is like a giant thing about, like, I wonder why the stoning happened. I'll have a few theories throughout. One of them was that in the backstory we get with the high school kids like Senku, Yuzuria, and Taiju, we see that they sent their 3 dolls of themselves to space. So I wonder if like an alien civilization saw those 3 dolls and like gave them the gift of Dr. Stone or something. I don't know. That could be interesting. I have a bunch of other theories, so maybe Senku from the future is what created the stoning, or maybe it's someone trying to help the humans survive climate change or something, because we know that it's like encasing them in a stone for them to survive any environment. It was interesting. We got this little bit of lore from Senku, which says that the stoning of the swallows, the like birds, is proportional to the populations of swallows around the world, which kind of implies that maybe not all of them were frozen before the humans were frozen. Maybe it's only like experiments that are being run and only a few of them are being frozen. Or maybe it is just him saying that all the swallows were frozen and we can only see the samples of the ones we see which are frozen to kind of determine that it is proportional. So I don't know, it doesn't really imply that much. My immediate thought, so when you see the stoning from the ISS, you see this like, you see the green aura spreading about the planet, but you see this like giant orange or yellow looking blob thing on top of the Earth, which I thought it was in the North Pole, but they kind of clarify it later. But my immediate thought was the brain from Billy and Mandy. So if anyone has seen Billy and Mandy, there's this like green giant brain that like comes down to the Earth and it like starts stealing everyone's brains and like ruins their entire like society. And it's like the most terrifying thing I've seen in my whole life. And there's like a song playing during it. It's like dun 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 dun. You know, it's great. Look it up if you haven't seen it. Look up like Billy and Mandy brain scene. I'm sure you'll see it on YouTube. But that's what I immediately thought of. I'm like, Jesus, is there some intergalactic giant brain that's like sitting over the Earth and is like doing something to the Earth to fix it? I don't know. What is this? So yeah, I guess this is also more theorizing on what it actually is after I got that thought out of my mind. So I said, okay, we're now actually getting some hints that make the mystery box worthwhile. So my whole theory here was about how, because it seemed like the yellow thing was on top of the North Pole, and it's interesting that the stoning is green, because that's what the Aurora Borealis or whatever, that's green as well. And I know that's caused by the solar ejections or whatever hitting the Earth and like change and having some issue with like interfering with the oxygen in the atmosphere or something and emitting a green hue. So I guess my theory was that maybe the stoning was caused by some ejection of ions into the Earth's atmosphere. But then I thought, okay, maybe that's not the case, because that would destroy all the electronics, and it seemed like Twitter was still up, and that's what the dad was talking about. So maybe it isn't like a solar ejection, and maybe the green, like maybe we don't know what actually caused the green, but maybe the green itself is green because it is the disruption of the Earth's oxygen somehow, because that's what would cause the atmosphere to look green, I guess. So I wonder if we'll ever get a reveal like that, because I feel like we'll get a scientific explanation for why the color was green, you know? Could have been yellow, could have been blue, I got no idea, but it was green. So I'm putting down my theory now that it has something to do with the oxygen, like the oxygen in the atmosphere getting interrupted. Not interrupted. I don't even know what causes it. I think it's like when you give ions to the oxygen, one of the electrons like goes to a higher shell, and then when the electron goes back down, it emits a photon of light or something. It's something to do with quantization of electron shells or something. I vaguely remember this from high school, but something like that. So what did I say? If we're going with science, it could be some type of solar flare that seemed... Yeah, I think I've said all this. Swallow, perhaps solar ejection, yellow dome. Yes, okay. Then I questioned, will the show get into time travel and time dilation? Which I got no idea. So obviously the show or story, manga, whatever, is going to end with them going into space, because that's what Senku said. He's going to rebuild society until they get to ramen in space. So that's what it's going to lead. But in that journey, will they ever get to time dilation or time travel? I got no idea. Another, not really theorizing here, but something I noticed, which is that when they're making, I think, the phone or something like that, some electricity-based thing, they find a bunch of gold, and I'm just wondering, like, how did they get that gold? Because obviously humans have mined pretty much every bit of gold you can find. So I wonder if 2,000 years is enough time to spread that gold around again. I feel like it isn't, but maybe it is. I guess the immediate thing I think of is how you would think the same thing of oil, but then the explanation for the oil was that there's enough oil, just not enough for, like, an entire global economy. There's only enough for like a small number of people. But the difference is that I feel like oil is very well defined in its location, whereas gold is like spread around the earth and it's like very hard to find it. I don't know. Now I said I thought this is a kind of rambly point, I guess, where Tsukasa says to Chrome, the world was purified by someone for some purpose. And I feel like Tsukasa is the antagonist in this situation, so I'm meant to like be opposed to that in the story. So this frames so Tsukasa's line here, the world was purified by someone for some purpose. This frames the stoning as a as a metaphor for God creating the universe or sending Noah's flood, right? Like it was purified by someone for some purpose. So this kind of frames Tsukasa's side as being based on religious belief and faith in God, whereas Senku's side is obviously opposed to all that because it's like science and all that. So there may have been, so his side would basically be saying, so there may have been a creator of the universe, but their will has no bearing on the lives that we live today. So, for example, this could be implying that some things can never be explained, but we can come up with better and better explanations as time goes on, which is like a very science-based thing. So I wonder if that's what will be the eventual explanation to this stoning. Tsukasa's sister is glowing when she's revived, and I wonder if it's like something like where the more damaged you are and the more the stone has to heal, the more it will emit light. And I wonder if that implies something scientifically about how what the stoning actually is. Because I feel like emitting light is like some, like with the green atmosphere, it has to do with like the ions, the electrons in a atom's shells or whatever. I feel like there's also a bunch of Senku and I don't know her name, so I just wrote Gorilla, the Gorilla Girl. I feel like there's a lot of foreshadowing that those two will get together eventually. And my final thing is a very far away prediction, which is that, so obviously the stone is healing people, right? And it's like it's a blessing, kind of, more than a curse to be stoned, because it saves you from death. Now, I wonder if eventually, because obviously we're going to capture the stone, like we're gonna capture the essence of this stone, and one day we're gonna be able to have a ray that like freezes people in stone, like we want to do with Tsukasa, so we can heal him. So eventually that's gonna happen. I just wonder what society will be like when we get to that point. And my one thing I proposed is that maybe people will start wearing the stone like they wear clothing today. So the benefit is that like you will constantly you'll have all of your non-joints covered in stone so that you can never be hurt. So if your stone is like hit or whatever, like you say, or damaged, you can like what do you even call it? Crumble it off, and you'll be healed perfectly, and you can like stone it back, and you'll be good. So maybe everyone in their house will live with like a stone gun that before they leave the house, they can stone themselves up and then leave, and then come back and take the stone off or something. Or if that's like too heavy or something, it's like really heavy to have all the stone. Maybe you could just stone the back of your head or something like that, because clearly Senku and Taiju maintained consciousness when their brains were stoned. But if you do keep your brain stoned, it's not like a movable part of your body, so it should be fine to maintain constantly stoned. And that way there'll never be any traumatic brain injury, because your brain can't be injured if it's constantly stoned. So I wonder if that's like a thing that'll happen in society, or if the show won't even bother going down that path at all. I got no idea, but it could be interesting. All right, now I have a bunch of miscellaneous notes. So let's go through, and that's it, I think. So Senku is messing around with a PSP. So in his backstory, he was like tearing apart a PSP, which was so relatable because that's something I did back in the day when you there was this thing called Chicken Bug 2 or something, which I tried to look up to make sure I wasn't like misremembering, and I couldn't find anything about it. So maybe I did just make this up. But what I definitely didn't make up is that I thought that to enable this Chicken Bug 2 exploit to work on the PS2, you had to open up the battery and create a Pandora battery or something by undoing one of the pins on the battery, and somehow that like made it a crazy like hack or something. I don't know, but I did that once and it like smoked, and like the battery just like not good things didn't happen. All right, but I thought it was very relatable when I saw good old Senku playing with his PSP and destroying it by accident. Another miscellaneous note that the 3 OPs that have been in the show have all been incredibly mid. And it's impressive. Usually, when a show has multiple OPs, at least one of them will be like pretty good, all right? But these were all pretty mid. However, the one for the special was really good. Like that's a really amazing opening. I like that one a lot. And it's really funny because it's literally just the first opening redone, like with like slightly different visual. Actually, the visuals are, I would say, much improved, but slightly different lyrics and a different kind of arrangement, I guess you would say, of the singing. But I thought it was way better, so I don't know what it was, but some difference made it way better. Oh, excuse me. The recap at the beginning of every episode is also really long, so like this show has an interesting production. Like there's not too much animation. There's that Crunchyroll thing at the beginning, which is like integrated into the show. I don't know why. And there's always this giant recap at the beginning. So I don't know what's going on, but I feel like this is a unique kind of production, not like a standard anime kind of production that you'd usually see. So I don't know what that it means, but something like that. Dr. Stone is the stone itself. That is a really cool reframing where initially I just assumed that Senku was the Dr. Stone, like he's gonna be a doctor of using this, like of mastering how this stone works or something. But no, it's like the stone itself is a doctor and it heals you. I'm like, oh, it's a really interesting framing. Senku always saying 10 billion% is awesome. I love it. I hope I can one day start saying that. That'd be awesome. Oh God, do I hate? I should have put this in. It's not a frustration, I guess, but it's like I guess it ties in with the overall tone of the show. I hate the sulfur princess witch girl thing, okay? The blue sulfurina or whatever they call it. I hate it. It's so unnecessary and cringeworthy, and it's everything that I wish the show wasn't, all right? Encapsulated in one visual metaphor. I hate it so much. The gag, but this is a great gag, right? When someone has a great idea, one of these primitive village people, it shows a light bulb. But as the show goes on, the light bulb gets progressively better. Like initially, it's like that bamboo, like two things, the little bamboo string and the two like electrodes being stuck to it. And as the light bulbs increase in their like technology, the light bulbs in their head start increasing to get more and more sophisticated. I thought that was awesome. But now back to something terrible, right? Because I hate the show. The zero gravity animation when they're in the ISS, I thought that was pretty bad. Like things don't like it when you're in space. Obviously, there's no. What do you even say? You maintain your inertia or something. There's no. You're not going to suddenly stop because of gravity or anything like that. But certainly doesn't feel like that in the animation. It feels like gravity is kind of there quite a bit of the time. So I feel like that's a bit of an issue. That's like a production thing, you know. This is a very miscellaneous note, but Lillian Weinberg, obviously a famous singer in this world, but I just had the thought of, I wonder if there are there in our world anonymous singers that have been very famous? Like, I can't think of anyone that's like, oh, this person is anonymous and everyone loves their songs, but that would be an interesting thing to try one day. I feel like with TikTok, you'd probably get away with something like that. Another very miscellaneous thing about the ISS, because we spent a little bit of time up there. I just wonder, like in real life, what is it like being on the ISS in terms of comfort? Like, do you, when you're on there long enough, like I know there's people who are there for like months at a time, do you eventually forget that you're in space? Like, do you just feel like you're in a normal room or something? Like, obviously, you're not going to forget you're in space because you're floating around and everything, but do you constantly feel like right outside of this like barrier of my wall is just death? Like if something punctures here, we're just gonna die? Or do you just get used to it over time? Like, does it just feel like you're in any other building? And I guess the two things I would kind of relate it to is maybe obviously a submarine underwater. That'd probably be a very similar feeling, but also maybe a boat in the middle of the ocean. I feel like that's more relatable for everyday people. Like maybe if you're a boat, you're in the middle of the ocean on a boat, you kind of feel vulnerable, where it's like I'm just like stuck here at the whims of this boat. If the boat breaks down, I'm just like dead. But at the same time, like you just get used to it when you're on the boat. If you don't see the water around you and all you see is your room that you're sleeping in, you kind of like it's like, oh, okay, it's my boat, my room, on this boat. I wonder if that's similar to how the ISS people feel. I got no idea. All right. The idea, here's another note. The idea that everyone stopped posting online at the same time is wild. Imagine going to the latest tab on Twitter and seeing the time just ticking higher and higher. That would be, like the time since a tweet was made go higher and higher. That would be a terrifying sci-fi movie concept where the protagonist doesn't know about a calamity that happened and keeps living their life as normal, but slowly sees subtle signs like this that they keep dismissing, but the signs are building up. It's like something's going on in this world. Another idea is that you just have a normal story going on, but in the background, like a normal movie or something, but in the background you get subtle hints like this, where it's like what's going on? Like, a fan theories can be made about, like, say the newest John Wick movie. In the background, maybe someone will be checking Twitter and they'll be scrolling and they'll go to the latest tab and it'll be, say, like 20 minutes ago was the latest tweet, and like, huh, what's going on in this world? And you get like hints throughout the movie, and it's like not related to the main plot of the movie at all, but it could be a fun thing for fan theories and stuff. So yeah. I said, this damn song we heard a million times, but the singing doesn't match the rest of the show at all. I hate it. This is only for people who know Blindwave, but this is like the perfect show for Blindwave, purely because they really seem to enjoy like being in the woods and like weapons and like primitive technology and stuff. And that's something they always talk about in I don't know, podcasts and shows, and when they talk about their like growing up and everything. So it is really interesting to see them react to these things. And when Senku brings up, oh, we're gonna do this, or he like explains the certain steps in a process to making something, and they're like, oh yeah, that is how you do it. And I'm like, oh, look at these like general knowledge people. I got no idea what Senku's doing, but they've like, they know all this like little basic like primitive technology stuff. And I'm like, oh, it's so cool to see like a reaction series like this. So I enjoyed the Blindwave reactions. This show, yeah, one thing in terms of production, and I guess the way the story is conveyed, Dr. Stone feels very similar to how I got reincarnated as a slime. I think that's what it's called, isn't it? No, that time I got reincarnated as a slime. They feel like very similar shows. Like, if I assumed they were made by the same studio, but when I looked it up, I don't think they were. But to me, Slime is like a 10 out of 10, or like a 5 out of 5, I guess, in this context. But I would say most of the time, Dr. Stone is probably a 2 or a 3. But overall, on average, and it got better over time, eventually it's a 4 out of 5. So, yeah, it's just interesting. I don't know what it is about it, but you can probably see, like, over all these notes I've said, there's something that you can piece together that like is some coherent theory of why this is not as good as Slime. But yeah, I can't really put it into words straight away. Senku would never bring up his own birthday. What a cool guy. They haven't addressed this yet in the show. Maybe they will in season 3, but they absolutely need to train a new craftsman, because this man is old and they rely on him so much. If he dies, they are utterly screwed. So they need a new craftsman being trained, and I'm surprised they haven't done that yet, because obviously for the science side you've got Chrome. On the muscle side you've got obviously we had Tsukasa and Hyoga. Now we got Magma and the prison guy, and we got like a bunch of strong people. But the other like choke point of their entire civilization is the craftsman guy, and if he dies, they're screwed. Then I said, I wonder if this show would be better without the Tsukasa stuff, if it was just purely them spending time in their primitive village and trying to make it better with science. And I absolutely think that it probably would have been a better show if that had just been the entire focus. And I'm kind of hoping that season 3 onwards will probably like go back to that, and that will be the focus, is the science and the discovery and the exploration, rather than like building up to some conflict with a philosophical argument that I don't really believe in is a real thing from some person who thought of it in Tsukasa. So yeah, I'm hoping that's what the future will be now. I guess I also do like, early on, we only get, I think it's 5 episodes with Yuzuriha, Taiju, and Tsukasa. And I really like that it's only 5 episodes, because it really feels like when they come back, it feels like these are special people. Like, these are like, people who were there in the early days, and they're the only ones who can relate to you, who are alive for those 6 months with you. And it reminds me a lot of not Doctor Stone, The Walking Dead, where in episode 1 you got Rick and uh, Morgan, I think was his name, and they have like this special connection, so that when Morgan comes back, 5 seasons from now, you really feel like they're like this is an old friend from an old time where we were the only two alive back then. It's a really special feeling, and Doctor Stone captures that quite well. Um, then a very miscellaneous note again. So Thorgil from Vinland Saga reminds me of Magma a lot, or I guess the other way around. Magma reminds me of Thorgil a lot in terms of design and attitude in a way. Um, then it's interesting how perfectly. Oh, I guess this is interesting. Mecha Senku, all right. Um, Usually, I would be completely opposed to Meta Senku, and I'd be like, why are you disrupting the flow of the story to give this interjection of how things work? And just make Senku explain it, all right? Why do we have Mecha Senku here? But they do a great job of making me like this, because, or at least accept it, because initially they first do it when Senku's making a bomb, and it's like, you clearly need the story to break the meta for a second and be like, kids, don't do this, all right? This is dangerous. Don't follow his instructions. So, he introduced Mecha Senku, who's warning them about, like, don't actually do this at home. But at that point, the fact that we've seen it once and we accept it, that it's a valid reason to have it in there, because it's like, we got to have the protect the kids, blah, blah, blah. It's already got its foot in the door. So when it comes up the next time and it's like Mecha Senku's here, but he's not here for as good of a reason. He's just here to like explain something arbitrary. I'm like, oh yeah, it's Mecha Senku. It's part of the show. So the fact that he got his foot in the door early on, it just makes him part of the show, and it works very well. So I kind of like Mecha Senku, and I like the way that he somehow wriggled. Is that even a word? He made his way into the story. Right, that was cool. A lot of Tsukasa's army, if not all of them, especially like Nikki and I guess any of the characters like Hyoga, anyone we see, they all look like JoJo's characters, and I wonder if that's intentional. Like if this manga was inspired by JoJo's in a way, or maybe it's just the anime looks similar and maybe the manga doesn't look like them at all. But I feel like that was the case. This is also, I said, a very small scale show where there's only really 3 settings. There's the village, there's the science area where they do science stuff, and there's the Tsukasa Empire. So it's a very small scale show up until this point, I guess. Now they're going to go on a boat and go overseas or whatever, so I'm sure it will expand a bit, but it's interesting how small scale it is. Oh, and I just want to say that I'm a genius, which is that as soon as they got a magnet and they made it strong, I immediately thought, electricity, we're going to get electricity, oh my god, because I'm like, oh yeah, electricity is just when you spin a magnet. So yeah, I just felt like a genius at that point. I predicted it. And then someone got hit in the balls, and I just had this amazing thought where I'm like, I wonder if women think it's an exaggeration when men get hit in the balls and they like fall over or something. I wonder if they think that's like a meme that like people are just exaggerating when they do that. But I guess obviously it's not. But I wonder if that's like a thing that people without balls think, and they'd never admit it either if they thought that, right? They just have this unconscious bias on the inside where they're like, all right, I'll play along, but I know deep down you're not actually in that much pain. But they are. It is a very painful thing to happen. The final battle, yeah, I did enjoy the final battle. Like when the tank rolls in and they're going to not save Chrome, but they're going to save or liberate the miracle fluid or whatever. I just wish it was more grand. Like it is. There's some great moments, like when Taiju is has his shield, and when he like claps into the sound. What do you even call it? The sonic shield thing. That was really cool. But it just doesn't feel grand enough. Like, you've set it up for, 24 episodes? No, even probably more, like 30 episodes or something, setting up this conflict. And it just feels like it wasn't... Like, the tank looks a little goofy, and it's like, it's not as grand as I was hoping. Like, I guess the tank doesn't have to not look goofy, but the way it was directed is kind of, like, uninspired, and it's not, like, this cool... Like, you could have framed it as, like, a war film or something, like, with this cool directing, but, I don't know, nothing interesting and nothing too grand was done about it. And it just felt like another episode of the show, So I don't know, that was a little bit of a disappointment. This anime makes me feel like it follows the manga very closely. Like, this doesn't feel like there's any interesting adaptation choices or anything. It feels like I feel like I've basically read the manga. Um, so I do wonder if that's the case, but I obviously have no opinion here because I haven't read it. Um, my one note, oh yeah, because I haven't said anything about the special really, but I thought establishing a currency through trust, basically, like the trust that they will eventually find the oil. I thought that was a really interesting idea. Um, and also, I would never, ever, ever in a million years of my entire life fly in a balloon. Like that is the most terrifying thing ever. You're in the complete whim of the air and the atmosphere. I would never do that ever. That's all I'm saying. Um, oh, Jesus, how many other notes? Okay. This kind of feels like a weekly show. Actually, I thought that was interesting. Like that, basically, there's no difference between season 1 and 2. You could have easily just had this like go on and on and on, like Hunter x Hunter or something, like week to week. But yeah, it's just interesting how it's so consistent and so like there's not too much going on in terms of animation. It just feels like it could be like a Dragon Ball Z or a One Piece or something that airs just week to week. It's kind of cool. I like that. Like, there's no like seasonal arc or anything. I guess I don't know. It's cool. Um, and my second last point here, which is that this is an incredibly, I've said this early on, but it's an incredibly inspiring show. Like, it really makes me feel the power of science and want to, and I feel like, the celebrating the achievements of humanity or something. And like, personally, it makes me wish that I was like in Australia right now so that I could use my 3D printer and like print gears and stuff and create these cool things like Senku's doing. It's really inspiring. Like, truly. And it is one of the reasons why I rate it so highly, even if like a lot of the time I was a bit frustrated and stuff. Like the highs of this show are quite high, and the way it makes me feel about science and stuff is really, really great. And my last note here is that I might read the manga. When I finish this, I was like, I absolutely will. But now I'm like, I don't know, maybe. Purely because I want to know what caused the stoning. Like, initially, I was like, I don't care about this. There's not enough clues. There's not a good mystery box. But at this point, I'm like, I'm invested. I want to know what caused this stoning, So if season 3 doesn't explain it, I'll probably read the manga just purely because I'm curious. Um, but that's Dr. Stone. All right. I would summarize it, but I feel like I can't. It was generally pretty mid, but there's enough here that is really great that I pushed it up to 4 out of 5. But now, tier list, there you go. I feel like this is pretty generic. I'm sure most people would agree with this. Senku, best character in the show. And then followed by Nikki, she made me cry. I couldn't believe it in this dumb show. I thought Gen was great. I don't know what the hell this guy's name is, but the submarine operator arrow hearing guy, I thought that was great. And Suika, I thought she was also really great. I loved her, like, Detective Suika or whatever, like where she goes in the watermelon and goes inspecting things. I thought that was really cute and great. So those are my favorite characters. Then there's Tsukasa, who I really like. I feel like when I get to the end and I'm like, I don't really understand your motivation, and maybe you're just a really dumb person for thinking that this plan made any sense at all, but I still like him. I think he's really cool. I don't really have many other thoughts for these people. Chrome, great. I like how much Blindwave likes Chrome, actually, or Eric from Blindwave. I don't think I like him as much as they do, but he's pretty great. This brother was great. Love this old man. Taiju, Dad was awesome. Magma's fine, like pretty good. Hyoga, cool. Homura, cool. Yuzuriya, cool. Lillian Weinberg, she made me cry with her music, right? I like her too. Not much to say with these people. They're fine. I guess for the scientists, I thought these two were interesting, and I felt like this one didn't say anything. I don't remember, and also this one I didn't really remember much from her. I guess there's a little bit I remember from her, but I think one of these died very early. I don't know which one. But what else? I guess this guy I hated. I'm sure a lot of people probably like this guy because he might be a coward, but he fights when it's important to fight. I hated this guy. He's so annoying. He's like the Zenitsu of the show. So I don't like him at all. He's not as bad as Zenitsu, right? No one's as bad as him, but he is still pretty bad. But that's Dr. Stone. Next up, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So, this is a movie. It's 2 hours and 1 minute long, and I watched it on the 27th of May. And this was recommended by Kyle Entertainment. So, Kyle really likes this movie, right? So, I'm sorry to break your heart, Kyle, but this is a 3 out of 5, all right? I absolutely do not understand. Okay. I understand why Kyle likes this movie, all right? I don't understand why it's such a highly regarded movie, I guess I would say more generally. This is a romance movie which is very interestingly directed, and it has a very ambiguous kind of interesting directing choices and open-ended interpretations for the last like say half hour of this movie. So I can understand why Kai liked this so much. And it's also he loves his romance, he loves his sex scenes, he loves his passionate passionate love between these two women. I'm sure he loved that a lot. But this is this. If I'm sure Kyle, you're listening right now, you know how much I hate sex scenes and intimate scenes and stuff like that. I didn't like this, all right. That kind of aspect of this, but I still liked it. All right, it's a 3 out of 5. It's not terrible, all right. And I enjoyed watching it. I would absolutely say I didn't like put this off and be like, oh, let me watch half now and half later. I enjoyed watching this. All right, it's a good movie. But let me get into the notes. I got that out of the way. All right. So yet another movie that I know nothing about. So I had no idea. I had no idea if this was a romance, a drama, a crime thriller, science fiction. I got no idea when I started watching this. I also thought that Kyle Entertainment had a video on this, but after I like watched this, I looked it up and I couldn't find him making any videos on this. So I don't know where I got that impression from. So yeah. And I guess another thing before I get into the actual notes, for some reason, like I rented this on YouTube, in HD, and for some reason I could actually watch it in HD. Usually when I rent on YouTube, because of like copyright reasons, they say like I pay money to get the HD specifically, an extra $1 instead of the SD, and they only let me stream it in 480p, which is so annoying. But for some reason this movie let me do it in 1080p, and I was very thankful. So thank you whoever made this movie and made it available on YouTube. So now I have a bunch of pretty unstructured notes. The first is that the opening shots, like when they're in the boat and they're rowing or whatever, it reminded me of Black Sails a lot, where I'm like, man, this is some good water stuff here. I'm sure it was a practical set or whatever, where they went in the ocean, but it looked really good. It reminded me of Black Sails. I guess there really is no structure to these notes. My next one is how me just trying to piece together what's going on. So I said, if I'm understanding correctly, the family's daughter, so this girl here, Heloise or something, I think, is being married off to someone, but she doesn't want to be married off, so she's refusing to have herself painted or making it difficult for the person trying to paint her. And originally it was her sister who was going to be married, but her sister killed herself because clearly she didn't want to be involved in that marriage. So I figured that out eventually, so yeah. So early on, I put a note saying that I just realized that this movie is going to be really cool. It was completely reasons that the movie didn't go into at all, so yeah, this is point doesn't really stand anymore. But so that I said that the painter is literally, because what's happened, I guess the goal of the painter here is to create a portrait of this lady without being able to look at her when she's making the actual painting. So she can't just like copy what she sees. She has to represent through the portrait what she sees in her mind. Like, what is the representation of this woman in her mind? So I thought that over time, what we were going to see is the representation of this woman in her mind changing drastically as she gets to know her more. Like, how will this portrait change? Initially it's a very masculine looking portrait, and I'm like, is this her that she's drawing, or is it a man or something? And I thought, okay, over time, we'll get a different, like as she starts to see her more in like a friendly presence, or start to see more dynamics of her, the portrait will change and it'll be interesting. But we didn't really go down that route at all. But I thought it would have been cool. Another thing I thought is that what if this Heloise girl, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and I hope that's actually her name, what if she is putting on a certain face to be depicted a certain way, because she knows she's being painted, and then later on the reveal will be that all that we've ever seen of her so far isn't actually her true self, and even the intimate Heloise that we've grown to know isn't really the Heloise that she is on the inside, but I don't think we got any of that later, so I don't know what the point of that note was. The main actress, the painter, she looks like Rey from Star Wars in some shots. And in other shots, she kind of looks like I should have looked up what the proper term is, but like, those enchanting creatures? I think it's a siren, where it's like a mermaid that's like evil, and it like tries to lure men in and like enchant them into losing their mind or something. She reminded me of that, like a vampire or something, like some creature. And not like the actress looks weird or anything, but like the way that she's acting and like how wide open her eyes are and everything. It's like it was interesting. She was a very interesting character to like a very interesting performance, I guess, in that regard. It was very enchanting in a way, but in a like a creepy kind of way. Not creepy, in an eerie kind of way, I guess. None of this ever happened. I think I focused too much on the painting aspect of this when I was early on. But another interesting thing is that because obviously the painter can't look at Eloise when she's drawing, because she can't show her that she's painting her. So the painter herself has to put on the green dress and look in a mirror and kind of paint herself when she's wearing the green dress to get as a reference or whatever. Which kind of means that the final product isn't just going to be the representation of Heloise, but it's also going to be melded in with her representation of herself. And it's kind of like this final portrait is the amalgamation of these two people together in one, which I thought was an interesting idea, but they didn't go into that much at all. But it at least made me think of like what paintings are and stuff more generally. I thought that was interesting. The portrayal of men and women is interesting in this. I feel like it's a big aspect of like probably what most people would take from this movie, but I don't know. Because the only men we really see, there's like two men. We initially, when they're in the boat, we see those men, and sorry, later on we see the guy come to pick up the painting to deliver it. But the men in the boat were really interesting because they're portrayed as very distant, and they don't interact with her at all. Like the one man, the only interaction we really get is him in very far distance with like a muffled voice saying basically go up to the house if you go follow that road straight or something. And they're very like, even when her portrait falls, or like her canvas falls falls out of the boat, they don't like show any signs of caring or anything. They just like, she has to go and get it. They don't help her get it or anything. It's a very like, the men are very distant and not caring or anything, which feeds into the idea that it's like, this is a terrible patriarchal society that they live. I don't know when this takes place, but a while ago, obviously. Like, it's a terrible thing to be married off to men in this world. I thought that was an interesting way of portraying that, by not having any men in this and having the only men that show up be very distant. And I wonder if that's like a critique or like a subversion of what would happen in olden movies, which I haven't really seen, so it's just what I assume was the case in older movies, which is that maybe women were portrayed like that in the past, where women were kind of distant and they wouldn't play big roles in movies and they wouldn't be characters that only exist in the background or kind of not say things. I wonder if this is like a subversion of that and like kind of framing the movie through a female lens or something, because obviously all the characters in this are women. And I think the director is a woman, I'm pretty sure. I probably should have confirmed that, but that's what I'm assuming. So I think it is touching on that. So I thought that was cool. This movie also holds a lot of shots for quite a long time and lets you stew in the moment and be like, what's going on here? I thought that was really cool. And then I wrote, fuck old society, bro. Freedom should be a fundamental right. So I got really frustrated because I'm like, why does she have to get married to someone? This is so unfair. I hate society. Women should be able to do whatever they want, you know? So I don't know, I got frustrated, but in a good way, I guess. But I wonder, what would people in, whatever this takes place, like the 1800s or whatever, what would people in that society think if they saw this movie? Like, would they be, and say for instance this character is like complaining about how she doesn't want to be, not complaining, but like something way more strong of a word, taking issue with the fact that she's getting married off to someone and she feels terrible about it. Like, would a male audience in the 1800s like laugh this off and be like, oh, women, women shouldn't deserve to have a choice in this or something? Or were people like back then more philosophically sophisticated than we think of? Like, did they have some philosophical justification for their beliefs, which obviously is wrong by today's standards, but did they have some reason? Or was it just the fact that society hadn't even thought about that at all? And it was similar to like why gay people were persecuted because of like fear of the other or something. I just wonder what an old audience would think of a movie like this, which portrays women in like a different light to what they would have been back in the day. So I just wonder. I guess the first sign that we get that Heloise, I also have no idea what the painter's name is, and I'm assuming this person is Heloise, but the first time we get that Heloise likes the painter or thinks of her as like has a really strong opinion of her is when the mum tells her that Heloise speaks about the painter with the mum. And that's like it's like, wow, she really does care about you. And that's always a really fun, not fun, it's a powerful thing to feel in real life, when it's like someone that you're friends with, when you hear that they talk about you when you're not there. It is a very strong feeling. That this movie, it captures it very well in that scene where it's like revealed that she does talk about her, and it's like, wow, she really does like her. Yeah. And I guess the big thing is that it feels very different from the interaction they'd had up to that moment, where it doesn't feel like she really has like such a strong feeling towards the painter. In all the interactions, like she's always distant and she's like, trying not to laugh, like by like being stoic or whatever. But then we get the reveal from the mum that she actually does care, and it's really interesting. So so the painter shows Eloise the painting, and she tells her, oh, and Eloise tells her that um, it's fine that that the painter doesn't feel a special connection to the painting, because no, sorry, no, she says that it's fine that she, Heloise, doesn't feel a special connection to the painting because she wasn't the one who painted it. But the fact that the painter doesn't even feel a special connection to it is really sad. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. It's like it's an argument in support of like subjectivity of art, and how like the creation of an art should invoke some feeling rather than be something for others. Yeah, I don't know. But I guess the other side of this thing is that when the painter is talking about how she made the painting, she talks about how this isn't just my painting. It's like there are some rules and conventions that are established to get rid of like the fleeting experience of society and reach some truth. And that's like that's an argument at the opposite end of objectivity. Which, yeah, it's really interesting to see it framed that way. I've never seen it framed as like a collective history, as like the objective part of art. I thought that was really cool. What else? It's strange. What does this even say? It's strange that they put the reveal of the. Oh, this was like me misunderstanding, I guess. But yeah, it is interesting how at the beginning of the movie, the students are like, "What is this painting?" And she's like, "Oh, a portrait of a lady on fire." And to me, I was like, "Oh, so that's the painting she's gonna eventually paint." So for me, when I'm watching this, I'm like, "Huh, how does the portrait she's painting now? How does it eventually end up as like this distant painting of the girl on fire in the distance?" But obviously, that was a wrong assumption because the painting was actually just a painting of her. So I don't know. Then a very miscellaneous point here, which is that in one scene there's like a chimney and it's like raining outside, like pouring. And I just wonder if it is. I've never had a chimney in my house, but if it's like really windy or painting Jesus, or like hailing or like really strong rain, does it like make it dangerous? Like, does it blow the fire like towards the like living room or something? Like, I have no idea how that works. But I feel like surely that's the case, and that's like really dangerous. Um, so then I get very confused. So I think the latter half of this movie, not half, but like, the latter end, everything after basically the campfire thing, I was a little bit confused. But I guess the first thing I get confused about is like when the pregnant assistant girl, the maid, I guess I'll call her going forward, she like runs back and forth and she's like choking herself and stuff, and I'm like, is this some like abortion ritual? That's what I assumed. If anyone's listening, Kyle Entertainment, since you're such a fan of this movie, is that an abortion ritual? Is that what was going on? I had no idea. I feel like this happens like a lot. Like it happened in The Last of Us 2, where not Last of Us 2, but The Last of Us as well, in the show, where the one woman gave Ellie this cup thing, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Is this some like period related thing? And I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here. Same thing happened here. I'm like, is this like something that most people know about? Like, when you want to have an abortion, you run up and down. And I'm like, is that really what's going on here? No idea. And then I realized, like, is there no music in this movie? Because I remember the music at the end. That was obviously a big deal, but that's also non-diegetic music, where it's like in the actual scene. So I wonder if there is like a soundtrack. I just don't remember anything from it, which is really cool if there isn't, because I was very engaged. So I guess you don't need music to be engaged. But yeah, back to the confusion. Oh, this isn't really confusion, but this is like a very general thing that I have with stories. All right, I've mentioned this before with Vinland Saga, but there's a thing unique to me. I think maybe it's not unique to me, but when someone in a story, in a movie, in an anime, in a TV show, in a manga, whatever, or not a manga, I guess, but in an auditory visual medium, when someone is reading out a story or a poem or a Bible passage or something, I just like for the life of me, I cannot understand a single thing they're saying. Like, I just cannot pay attention. Like, I would, if I wanted to really understand what they're saying, I would have to rewind and like pause and like read the words and like subtitles and just think, because when those things like when they're reading something, I just like I can't. And I think the reason is that almost all of the time when they do that in a story, they're just like trying to make something explicit. They're trying to convey a theme in words or something, or they're trying to say something about a character by making it very explicit in like a poem or something. And I just like hate that. And I like lose all interest. And I'm like, I don't want to go back and like pay attention to this and actually understand what like flowery language they're using here to describe some obvious or direct theme, you know? Like I said, it's like, okay, yeah, give me the theme, give me the thematic monologue, I'll tune it out for a bit, basically. And this is something that happened, yeah, it happened in this when, I don't remember what it was, but I think the painter was reading I think they were reading a book or something, and I'm like, I can't, like, I don't know what's going on with this book. Maybe that's why I misunderstood the ending. Maybe the book all ties in perfectly with all the ambiguous stuff that goes on after the campfire, but I just could not listen to this book, right? It was the most boring thing ever. But it's not this thing's fault. It happens in everything that I listen to. And it also happened in the TV show Dark, where in season 1 they have this play, like a theater production, and it's like directly like conveying the themes and trajectory of season 1. Like I can't do this, like really. So I don't know. So yeah, now I get confused. What is this bonfire with all the women? They all sing a song. Is this that religious thing where the music, with the music that they were talking about at the beach? I got no idea. Main character sees daughter with bright lighting. Yeah, so the painter basically sees Eloise in the hallway, and she's like a ghost, basically, like really bright. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. I thought it looked cool. The visual of it was really cool, but I'm like, I don't know what this is. I guess eventually I started thinking that maybe that's her ideal life. Like she wanted to see Eloise like married to her or something, and they would live together. Maybe that's what that meant, but I'm not sure for certain. Then when the girl is having the abortion, which is like, I can't look at that. It's like so not upsetting, but it's like, oh, I don't want to see that. But see, if the baby next to her, it's like this like guilt tripping bullshit of like having a baby in the abortion, like just crawling on her. I mean, like this is the baby you're killing right now. I'm like, oh my god, this is terrible. This poor girl having to suffer, like already have to suffer through an abortion, but now she's being guilt tripped by having this baby here next to her. Like, oh man. Anyway, and then they paint the pregnant girl. I don't know why, like do a portrait of her. I think, and that because this note says painting, and I don't remember them actually physically painting on her, so I think they paint a portrait of her. Jesus Christ, I hate sex scenes. Yeah, they had a sex scene. The only good sex scene I've ever seen in my life was the one from that Berserk second movie, right? That was great, but I just could not handle this. It's so cringe. I just hate it. It's like, oh god, we're gonna be intimate now, right? That's what we're gonna do in this scene. It's gonna be an intimate scene, and you're gonna see the characters like each other, and oh, I hate it. Next note. I don't know if I've understood anything that's happened after the witch trial singing scene. Yeah, which I don't think it's a witch trial thing, but that's just what I wrote here. Then it was cool to see her in the future, like see the painting of Heloise and see the number 28, like the showing page 28 where the portrait of her is. So yeah, and also I guess the difference is that I guess there is a kind of subtle thing I was touching on earlier before, which is that the painting that we see the painter create of Heloise is a very masculine painting, whereas the one we see in the art gallery, Heloise looks very feminine. So it's like the way the painter sees her and the way that society sees her, which I thought was really interesting. But yeah, the final note is just about the final scene, which is basically a very long hold on Heloise's face, and it like zooms in very slowly, and she's experiencing all this emotion. It's very ambiguous, and I like it. It's probably the best scene in this whole... It almost certainly is the best scene in this whole thing, where it feels like it's both holding on for ages and too long, and it's like so long on there, and it's like, what are we doing? But at the same time, it feels like it's not long enough, and it's like I'm trying to piece together what is she feeling, and I'm trying to feel what she's feeling. And I don't come to any conclusion or anything. I'm not like, oh, obviously this is what she's feeling. And I think the ambiguity is what sells that scene at the end, where it's like, what is she feeling here? So yeah, that's a portrait of a lady on fire. So next up, Ravenous, 1999. So this is a movie. It's 1 hour and 41 minutes long, and I watched it on the 30th of May. And this was recommended by Ciclet in my digest last month. So let me think. What do I think about Ravenous? I have I don't know, complex thoughts about this. Firstly, I enjoyed this quite a bit. This is a 3 out of 5, right? This is a movie I think that got better over time as I watched it. It's a very quirky movie and a very interesting movie where I think I would enjoy this more if I rewatched it. Um, yeah. Let me just go through the notes here and we'll see. These are also very unstructured notes, which is the theme of today's Media Digest, right? But it is what it is. Um, so my first note, this definitely doesn't feel like it's set in the 1800s. Yeah, the main guy, like his haircut kind of seems like a very modern kind of haircut. And if you were to say this was like the 1950s or something, I'd be like, okay. But saying this is the 1800s or whatever, I'm like, Jesus, I don't know. I don't feel like this is the case. I also feel like there's a lot of famous actors in this that I don't recognize, but I'm like, I feel like this the emphasis they're putting on this guy kind of feels like he's a famous actor or something. Um, yeah, these are very miscellaneous notes. So the next thing I have is that the Irish man, whoever this is, I don't remember their name because I feel like they changed their name throughout, but Irishman is what I'm referring to him as, the head cannibal. I like his story when he first shows up and he's talking about the how they slowly became cannibals over time and one by one they all died and stuff. I thought that was very engaging. Um, the music in this, I think the music is the highlight of this movie. I love the music. I think also Ciclet said in the comment when he recommended this, is like, you already like the music, because I think it was in one of his latest Berserk thing, I think. But yeah, I love this. Like, there's this one song, not song, I guess, but one soundtrack thing where it's like the music builds up and it's like it keeps adding more instruments as time goes on. It's really cool. It creates like it creates an intensity over time for the scenes where it's like the scene starts off very timid, but as the music gets louder and louder and adds more instruments, it gets more intense, the intensity of the scene ramps up. I really like that. Now, this isn't a complaint, right? This is like a thing about me trying to understand what I like about things generally. I said there's a certain unappealing vibe to this movie, and it reminds me of why I stopped watching the movie Brazil. So Brazil is like this not fame. I think it's famous maybe, but it's this old sci-fi movie. And in that movie, it always feels like there's like it's the environment they're in is always busy and there's smoke and there's all these people moving around and it's always packed and like there's some off-putting uncomfortable feeling when I'm watching that movie because it's just too busy. And Ravenous kind of feels like this is the case as well, where they're not because, yeah, I guess because of the settings, like it's always a very busy setting. Like there's always these props and everything around the when they're inside the huts and everything, and there's all these characters that are interacting all the time and moving around the scene all the time. There's never like a static moment, I feel. I guess there are, but it's like it kind of feels like there aren't. And to me, I get this like weird kind of uncomfortable feeling where to me it feels like you're just to like give you an impression of what I'm feeling. It's like when you're walking down like a certain path and you have like an ocean of people running against you the other way. That's the kind of feeling I get when I watch the movie Brazil, and also kind of the feeling I get when I'm watching Ravenous. It's hard to encapsulate, but I think it has something to do with the set design and the way that the way that the way the set feels when I'm watching it, and also how the characters move around the frame when they're moving. I'm sure no one could relate to this, but I had to express that because I've been feeling that for a while. But what else? Before they go into the cave with the cannibal cave, it was really smart and really interesting to ask the cannibal if he felt physically stronger, because it really sets up like the fear of what is in this cave. If this man feels like he is stronger after being a cannibal, what kind of danger is in there? And he like escalates the tension when you're actually in that cave scene, which that cave scene might be the best scene in the show. I don't know, in the movie, maybe not, but just like when they enter the cave and they realize it's a trap, and this guy on the surface is like freaking out and not saying anything. He starts digging a hole like an absolute like monster, and it's like, what is going on? Like the tension there, and like you don't know what's going on, as at least I didn't as the audience, but it seems like the guy in the cave knows what's going on. It seems like this guy knows what's going on, and the other people are just clueless, and it's so scary. And yeah, I really like that. That was a highlight of this movie. But then it's really, I do like this as well. And it's a very quirky movie where after the tension of this scene and you get revealed that this guy is the cannibal, and he kills the jovial fat leader guy, and he chases the other guy. There's this really goofy like tonal mismatch in the music. It's like a very light-hearted music in this chase, and I think it's really cool. Like this is meant to be a very scary scene. But it's playing this, instead of playing like an ominous, like terrifying, like shrieking chase music, it's playing this like goofy fun music where it's like, oh, for this cannibal, it's a fun time to chase this guy. Yeah, it's like there's no fear in this tone, whereas usually it would be a fearful scene. I thought that was really interesting, and I think this kind of interesting vibe, I guess, um, it feels like it's a director's choice, and it feels like the director has a very strong creative vision when they're creating this movie. Um, yeah, I'd have to rewatch it to kind of get some specific examples, but that's the vibe I got. Like, I feel like the director, you can see the director in this movie, where sometimes you see a movie, especially in like a lot of Marvel movies and stuff, you see a movie and you don't feel like there's some creative vision behind it. This one feels like there's a very strong creative vision behind it, so I like that. Um, Oh, so this particular background image was awesome when I thought that scene was cool when the cannibal chases him and then he gets shot, and he just gets up and the music starts playing, and it's like the music is so great in the scene. It's like, I don't know how to describe it, but it adds to the scene a lot, where it's like the terrifying nature of this guy who can't be killed and he's getting up and the music gets up with him. It's great. The music is, again, another point. The music is really good. When Boyd arrives back at the village after being stranded and the thankful music plays, it's great. Yeah, it's true. Because you see him like in the distance, like all bloody and stuff. And it is like this triumphant music. He's finally got back. I thought that worked really well. And it's kind of like on the, like, not on the nose. It's like, kind of like you're meant to question when you see that triumphant music. It's like, is this real triumphant music, or is it suddenly going to kick into different kind of music at the end? And it's like he's going to realize that no, everyone here is already dead or something, and other cannibals have come and killed them. So I like that. Then I have a question of like, is the cannibal real? Like, are we watching a movie? Because obviously we have our main character. I don't remember Boyd. I just said his name. Who I feel like is a big actor or something. He he's obviously, he has post traumatic stress disorder from some war he was in. He got trapped under these bodies in a Spanish camp or something. I just wonder if we actually are seeing cannibals here, or if it is just this movie is framed from a man with psychosis, and we're just seeing abstractions of terrible things he does when he's in his like psychotic states or something. I feel like surely there's like some theories about this, I'm sure, on the internet. But that's the kind of vibe I wondered about when I watched this. Oh, another great scene is when this man, the cannibal, shows up as the commanding officer, or whatever his like title is. That was scary. Where it's like, I think I'm sure I've seen this in other things as well, but it was very effective here. Where it's like, oh man, we can't get away from this guy. He is like powerful. Like he has infiltrated the ranks of the army or whatever. Like, man. And then we get the reveal that the jovial captain guy is alive, which was great. I love that guy, and he comes and saves the our main character. It's great. And then when it's like the three of them, these three cannibals together, I was kind of on the side of like, just join them, you know? I feel like the main Boyd, I think he'd live a better life if there was just the three cannibals, you know, eating people, getting stronger, living a nice, simple life, you know, no army stuff, no duties they have to do. I don't know, I just kind of felt that, you know? I think he'd live a happier life like that. Oh, then I wrote specifically about that song I like, so the plucking of the guitar, which builds up more and more instruments over time. I thought that was a great song. The main cannibal, this guy's the best actor in this thing. I don't know who he is. I'll have to look him up and like watch his other movies. This guy was an awesome actor. I really liked him. What else? The captain kills himself. The fat jovial captain guy, because he's just up until now, ever since he's been resurrected, he's been coping with what's been going on. But he wants Boyd to kill the cannibal and himself because it's like terrible what they're doing and how they're living. And then I really like, this is another really cool directing choice, where when Boyd is trying to find the cannibal, basically, and everywhere he looks, like when he's looking around, you get like this one frame, like a flashed frame in his vision of the cannibal, like smiling at him or something. And that's a very, like, they've really captured that feeling well. I've had that feeling before, where it's like you're looking around in like fear of something, and you always feel like you're seeing them in the not even the corner of your eye. You feel like you see them directly in your vision, but they're not actually there. I feel like this movie did it. That scene did a very good job of capturing that kind of feeling. So yeah, that was a Ravenous. So overall, it's interesting. This is a movie I think I'd like to rewatch, and it would probably bump up quite a bit after a rewatch. But yeah, it was fun. A lot of interesting scenes, a lot of cool directing choices. Music was great. Acting was great. I look forward to watching this again one day. So next up, Yee, 2000. So this is a movie. It's 2 hours and 53 minutes long, and I watched it on the 31st of May, so right at the end of this month. And this was, jeez, my voice is going. This was recommended by Lenny Turtle 1 on last month's digest. Oh my goodness. Okay. So preface or preface, before I talk about this. So I'm sure there's a lot of details in this movie that I missed, because I couldn't remember any of the character names. And initially I found it very hard to keep track of like who the characters are and all their complicated relationships. So I'm sure if I rewatch this, I'd probably understand a lot more. But overall, this was a 5 out of 5 movie. This is the best movie I've seen all year. One of my favorite movies I think I've ever seen. I thought this was really good. And now I'm going to try and explain why I like it so much. I have a bunch of miscellaneous notes. They're somewhat structured, probably more than the other movies, more structured. But the big takeaway from this movie and why I like it so much, and you can probably see by the image I chose here in the background, is that I also wonder like what people took from this movie. I wonder if what I'm going to say is like a very common thing or if it's like a very unique thing. To me, this is the like realist movie I've ever seen, where like I almost want to say it's like the most relatable movie. But the thing is that I haven't been in any of the situations that these people have been in. I haven't been to a wedding where I'm standing up here drinking and celebrating with all of my family. I haven't been in that situation, but I feel like I have, you know? It feels like a very real movie where I know that this is for a fact that this happens in real life. And I know for a fact that one day I will be in this situation. It feels like it's capturing the human experience, is what this movie feels like. And I love it. So let me see what I've got. So realist movie, daily experience similar to, yeah. So as an Australian watching a foreign movie, to me, I guess one thing I took from this movie is that it feels like it's a movie about the universal human experience, where it's people in Taiwan, they go to they're not China, they go to Japan, there's an American person, and I'm an Australian watching this, and it's like, you got the English subtitles hard-coded into the movie. That's like an interesting part of it. And all of this ties together to feel like it's trying to show how I mean, I'm not sure if this is the intention at all, but as an Australian watching this, as a non-Taiwanese person watching this, it definitely feels like it's showing how people all around the world are the same. Everyone will have a wedding where they're celebrating. Everyone will be sitting in their apartment at night looking out the window as they're like thinking about their life. Everyone will be driving to the airport, looking out the door and seeing the city lights. Like it just feels like such a universal human experience that all of these cultures around the world have these mundane experiences of daily life that are common to everyone. I really like it. It's a great movie. What have I got? Yeah, the static shots holding for so long. There are scenes here, like I think this scene in the background here, it just holds for like 10 to 15 seconds. You're just looking at this scene. It happens for so many scenes throughout the movie, and I love it because it's like you're just seeing these people live their lives. There's no fancy camera movement. There's not like, you're not artificially creating intimacy by being really close up or anything and seeing their exact facial expressions. You're just seeing a raw moment in time in these people's lives, like in a distance. It's really cool how they frame stuff in this movie. Like, I love the director of this. I might want to, see what other movies they've made just to see if what other interesting ideas they have to the medium of film, I love this. So another aspect I liked was the very entangled interpersonal dynamics on display. So we start, like, everything around this movie is centered around the grandma because she like goes into a coma, and it's all about that family basically. And it's really interesting to see. Like the two examples I have here is that you've got the brother-in-law who is married to the main. I don't know any of these names, but the brother-in-law is married to the main character, like the man working at that company with the gaming thing they want to buy. Yeah, he's married to the main guy's wife, basically, and that's like a really interesting relationship. And to like demonstrate, I guess, the complex dynamic here, another one is how you've got the English teacher sleeping with the mother and daughter, who are the neighbors of the other daughter, who is friends with the girl who the English teacher is sleeping with, who also has been the girlfriend of the boyfriend of the other girl in the other room, who kills the English teacher. So it's like, this is like a messy web of like dynamics of people, because they all live in this small community, and they're all like kind of family. It's really interesting, and this movie portrays that very well. You will see, like, there's these scenes when particularly at the elevator at the family house, where there's a lot of scenes where you see someone doing something outside of the elevator, and then the elevator door opens and someone else walks in, and it's like these two people have their ongoing storylines and they're completely separate, but you know what's going on with both of them, and they're both like walking past each other in this situation. It's like, oh, that's really cute. So yeah. What else? So the movie frames things to make them feel real and relatable. So I guess I've talked about this already. So what are some examples here? There's a scene where the main character and his high school girlfriend have the big yeah. So there's the main guy and there's his like American girlfriend, not American, she went to America or whatever, high school girlfriend, and this whole time they've talked about, oh, you left me that day, why did you not come back that day? And they talk about this day, basically. There's this big day that happened where everything changed for them. And we finally get that discussion. Like, it finally comes out when they're in Japan. They have this moment where it's like, okay, they're basically arguing about what happened that day, and emotions are being expressed and everything. And obviously this is a thing I've seen a million times before in a million stories. What this movie does so well is that this argument is in the corner of the frame, in the distance, and you can hardly hear it. You can hear it, you know exactly what they're saying, but it's like, it's completely opposed to how this how this situation feels in real life, where when you're actually in a situation like that, it's right up close and you two are like staring at each other and you're passionate and your emotions are getting to you and everything. But this movie, it, instead of portraying it as like an intense moment of something unique to you and very special and a big part of like your life, it portrays it as something very distant and very, very common and very, it's not special to you. Like this happens to everyone. Everyone goes through passionate exchanges like this. And by putting that argument in the side of the frame in the distance with, you can hardly hear it. It's like, it reminds you of how you see these things in real life when you're walking past. You see couples arguing and you don't think about how intense it is for you when you're in that situation. You just see it as other people. And it's a thing that everyone goes through. I just thought that was really interesting, that scene. And that's like an example of how it makes it feel, the movie makes these scenes feel so relatable and real. So yeah, let me see what I got. It's like when we're watching it play out from a third-person perspective, putting distance between the events and the people in it, shining a light on how theatrical and emotional and unique these scenarios feel in real life, while being so common and just a part of everyday life around the world. So yeah. Another example of this like feeling real and relatable was the scene where you think the brother-in-law who like just had his child, when you think he died in the bathroom, like he killed himself or something out of the depression of his life. And to me, this absolutely perfectly captures the like absolute disbelief and horror of thinking that something absolutely terrible has happened. Like you think, like you enter the house and like something is wrong here, and you think that something terrible has happened and you're freaking out, and then you realize that things are going to be okay. And just the whiplash between there, where it's like initially you're freaking out and then you realize that things are going to be okay eventually. Like that's a scene that really captures that kind of whiplash, which is something that I've felt before, and I'm sure a lot of people have before. And the movie like does a really good job of capturing like the highs and lows of life like that. So I really like that scene as well. Very relatable, real kind of scene. The movie, let me read this out. So the movie also touches on the cyclical nature of life, where everyone goes through the same struggles and has to learn things their own way. Yeah, so on one hand, we basically, the reason I wrote this down is like you get the parallel of the main guy and his high school girlfriend when they're in Japan, kind of mending things after their initial breakup so many years ago. And at the same time, you've got his daughter and her boyfriend, like new boyfriend, whatever, at the start of that cycle where they're going through the initial problems that the couple are now resolving. So it's kind of like the father can't teach the girl this lesson. She has to go through this and experience herself, and one day she will get to the point where the dad is now, and she will understand as well. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting, showing the cycle of life and everything. So now I just have a bunch of great scenes. So I think I've got my main points about what I liked about this movie. So I'm just going to read through a bunch of really cool scenes that I liked in this without really much analysis or anything. It's just me going through it. So he takes the kid to McDonald's during the wedding. I thought that was really cool. So initially when they're at the wedding and the main guy meets the girl out, like she comes out of the elevator. Oh, excuse me. And and he like presses the button because he wants to get in, but she comes out, so he misses it. And then she comes back and like talks to him about like why did you leave me that day? But then their school friends, like their mutual school friend, comes out of the elevator, and they shift personalities and they pretend to be like different people basically, because it's like we can't like fight about this in the front of other people. And that's like, oh wow, that's like a very relatable kind of real kind of thing. And then he misses the door again because the friend came and he has to press the button again. It's like a mix of comedy and like real stuff. I really like that. Just sitting, yeah, after the wedding when it's the family sitting in the car, not saying anything as they're driving in the darkness and they're bumping over the like bumps in the road. So cool. Um, when they go to the hospital for the grandma, when she's had a stroke, I thought it was really cool how like I'm sure this is something that no one else really cares about, and probably the movie. This is definitely not an intention of the author or anything. But when the main guy asks his friend if he drove here drunk, um, and to me, it's like, wow, this is like a movie taking place in Taiwan, completely different culture, completely different customs, whatever. It's just so interesting and universally relatable of a moment where it's like, you drove here drunk, that's a dumb thing to do. And he kind of like, it makes you think about how there's all these cultures and everything, but there's so many similarities across them. And driving on these roads with this well-defined like driving system is so, it's so universal. So I don't know, bunch of small things like this, right, that make this movie so great. And then I had like this miscellaneous thought about like, it's really interesting how all the roads across the world have the same like layout. They just have these like white painted lines with like symbols. I wonder where that comes from. Like, who was the first country to have like a road like that, and who adopted it, and like when a like new standards adopted into these road systems. Like, who defines that and all that, you know? Um, the young boy in the dark, when he's lying on his bed with his eyes open, and then he hears his parents come in during the night. It's like quiet, he can quietly hear them, and they're talking about like real life shit when they think he's sleeping. That was great. Um, the mum brings a man home. Yeah, so that they're neighbors basically. She brings a man home, and then the daughter of that house decides that she's going to go to the movies. That's a very funny thing. The That girl's boyfriend stands her up. She she goes to this bar, waiting, not bar, whatever, like some restaurant or something. She waits for the her boyfriend to show up, but he doesn't. So then her friend leaves, and the people behind her, like these not young kids, but kids her age, they keep laughing and stuff at her. And then the guy comes up to her and is about to like annoy her, but his friends like stand up and like, no, 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 we're not doing this. That was really cool. I was like, man, you don't usually see scenes like that in a movie. Usually the guy will come up to her and like harass her or something, and their friends will like laugh at it. But no, in this case, the friends are like, they're just normal people and they don't want any trouble, so they stop him from getting there. But I guess eventually she ends up like getting with that guy, and that guy kisses her, and it's like, oh, off screen. I guess they got together. It's subtle, cool storytelling. I like that. The Japanese man, like the business owner, the Otto or something, like that company. The scene where he's speaking together with the main guy, the main Taiwanese guy, when they're speaking English because it's like their common language. That's really cool. The shot of the reflective window showing the street. Yeah, so when the wife is basically like crying and like having a breakdown about living a blank life, and she's like, we see this shot of the window reflecting the outside of the world, while you hear the couple in the other room having like you hear and you see the couple in the other room having this domestic dispute basically, and you just hear these ambient city noises, and it's like the most down to earth real life thing. I'm just gonna keep saying that, real, all right? That's just how this movie feels, and that's why it feels like such a special movie, and why it hits so strongly emotionally, I guess, as well. The couple talking through. Yeah, so you got the young couple with that boyfriend on the bike. I like how they talk through letters when they're having a problem. They talk through the girl, like their common friend. That was cool. The English teacher sleeps with the mother and the girl freaks out. That was an interesting scene. The mother the new mother, this guy's wife, I think, when she's silently absolutely pissed when the group of people walks into the baby shower, and it's like, who invited her, and she's not saying anything, but she's like silently pissed, and I'm like, man, that's great. The scene, I talked about this already, but the scene when the main guy is traveling to the airport at night and he's just looking out the window looking at the city lights, I just love that. Like I've done that a million times. The girl sitting in the theater with her boyfriend, but clearly not a single thought of hers is spared towards what she's watching. All she cares about basically is her boyfriend in that situation. She doesn't have to say anything. It's just the way she's acting in that scene. That's really cool. I've got a few more, right? The dad just walking around. Yeah, so when the dad returns from the main guy returns from Japan, since his girlfriend like left, or his old girlfriend left him when they're in Japan, he just doesn't know what to do, and he like paces around the house trying to process it. Another really cool thing. I have a very long note here. What is this? So it's so cool seeing really old adults in their 40s acting like a high school couple. The woman losing her cool. Oh, so yeah, basically the main character and his high school girlfriend, when they're in their hotel room, and the girlfriend has a outburst of emotion where she's like, she gets mad and she's like, you never loved me or anything, and she has this breakdown. But they have, because they're older now and more mature, they have the maturity to talk about this. Like they have a maturity to talk through this situation, I guess, which wouldn't have happened in the past. Which is a very human kind of moment, because it's not like their ex-girlfriend boyfriend. Oh, I guess they are ex-girlfriend boyfriend, but it's not like they're boyfriend girlfriend in this situation. It's not like they're just friends in this situation or anything. It's just like they're two people in this situation. Like they're two mature people who are trying to work out the mess that is the past of their lives, you know? Like the past baggage they're trying to work through. And the scene hugging afterwards is really cute, even though it ends up going pretty badly when she leaves ambiguously. Which I guess is what this next point about, which is that after saying goodnight, he tells his ex-girlfriend, Sherry, I never loved anyone else. And it's a very ambiguous thing. And her reaction is also ambiguous, where she like breaks down in tears, but are these like tears of sadness, of like regrets, or tears of like, I'm glad this is all like I'm just letting out all the emotions I haven't let out in the past. And eventually she checks out, and we never find out why she left or anything. And does she hate him forever now, or is she's slowly coming to accept what happened in the past? Really interesting. Second last note. It's just what happens with the Japanese man, which I love the Japanese man. He was awesome in this. Such a pleasant, positive guy. So they have a moment of genuine connection at the restaurant over the card tricks and stuff. Well, not the card tricks, but the card. I guess it is a card trick. And then the next day, the guy calls in from work, and straight away is like, we signed with the copycat company. Tell this other guy to find a reason to get rid of him or whatever. Yeah, that's crushing, emotionally crushing. And the final note is about the kid on the bike who he shows up to his new girlfriend, like the daughter who was at the theater with him. For no good reason, he like lashes out at her emotionally, being like, "Oh, you did this, and I hate you," and blah blah blah. And you don't know why he did that until later on. You find out that he's just venting his absolute frustration in the fact that his ex-girlfriend slept with his English teacher. Yeah, it's just it's tragic, and it's like, man, if only he had a healthier way of like coping with this, so that someone could have reached out and helped him, you know. But no, it just ends in tragedy. So yeah, that's just a bunch of scenes in Yi Yi, which I loved. 5 out of 5 movie. So good. That's all I can really say. So now we have the 2023 rankings so far. So I don't think I've changed any of the other ones. So in terms of adding these things, we've got Yi Yi at number 3. This was tough, right? I was close to putting it above Chainsaw Man, but I can't. I really like Chainsaw Man, alright? Chainsaw Man, it's going to be tough to get above Chainsaw Man and Goodbye Eri. So I'm putting this at number 3, Yi Yi. Then in the 4s, toward the middle of the pack, a little bit lower, we have Dr. Stone. Then in the 3s, we've got Ravenous in the upper end, and then the Portrait of a Lady on Fire a little bit lower down. So that's my rankings this time. So now we have some YouTube videos. So let me check I'm recording. I really hope so. Yep, all good. So the first one, Orangutan card trick debunked. I guess debunk. I don't know why. Captain Disillusion. So this was recommended by Jarky Bacon. I've seen a few videos of this guy. I feel like this guy was on like the H3 podcast or something at some point, but I don't remember for sure. The one I remember was, I think, one Bacon also sent me, which was this guy made music videos for Atarashi Gakko, which I thought was really cool. I love those music videos. And only now do I know who Atarashi Gakko is, because I see them all over TikTok, and I didn't know who they were at the time when I saw the video. But now I went back and watched it, and I'm like, man, they're awesome, and seeing this, and that was really cool. But as always, I don't have too many notes for all these YouTube videos, but overall, this was a great video. I should watch more of this guy's videos. I don't know why I haven't. But Captain Disillusion, I assume is his name. He's a great performer. Like, the character he plays is really cool, and he's like acting really good. I like it. And I like the way the video is framed. It's like a story, basically. Oh, excuse me. And I'd like to make a video like this one day where you're playing a character and there's a storyline and there's a goal, and yeah, that would be just a really fun thing to do. And just the pacing of this story is really well done. And he has, like, the video is so dense and stuff, and there's all these visual tricks and stuff he's always has on screen, and something's always going on, and if you don't pay attention for a second, you like miss a really cool editing trick he did or something. And obviously it goes without saying, his editing is really cool, and the VFX he does is really awesome. So yeah, I said that I'm engaged. I want to know how they did the trick. So yeah, he got me in. Then there's a few things here about, like, the way he debunked something was that one really cool technique is that you stabilize the micro shaking bits, like of two pillars, for instance, and you see if there's a parallax when you've stabilized the scene. Is there a parallax between the one in front and the one behind? Because if it isn't, if it is a real thing, there should be a parallax. So that was like a genius idea where I'm like, man, I'd like to try that one day. Another thing was, like, if you zoom in on the frame, if you want to see something as a freeze frame, then you should look to see if the noise changes, because you could add noise if you're like really good, but generally you're not going to add noise to a freeze frame. Like, add dynamic noise or whatever that changes over time. So that was a really interesting thing to see, to point something out. And also the revelation of what the actual trick is, which is that, spoilers, I'm also going to spoil all this, but the trick is that the card is like hanging down on a string, and the orangutan picks it up. And the reveal that's why it feels so weird when he's picking up the card. He feels so like unusually dexterous for an orangutan. Yeah, that was really satisfying, and it's like, wow, that makes perfect sense. And you can't see it the same way now when you watch it again, because it's like, man, there is a string there. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. This guy, so the other thing is that I feel like this guy should, in his audience, have a bunch of lore masters. Like, I feel like he has a lot of lore behind him, where he has all these like visual gags and stuff going on, and at the end he, like, you zoom out, you see that Captain Disillusion is like in this like cage, and he's like an animal in this case, and I wonder if there's like a lot of theories. I wonder if he like plans this out in videos, and across all of his videos he has like some storyline about that. Like, if there's some people keeping track of this and the environmental clues and subtle hints he gives in some grand story, like, that would be really cool. And I'd really like to do something like that in my videos, but it doesn't really work unless you have like a big audience, you know? Because then it's just like you're making these like subtle clues for someone who's never going to pick it up unless you have like millions of people watching your videos. But it would be fun to try it maybe one day. Maybe encode like some secret message, you know, like look at the first word in every video or every third video and see if it spells out something, you know? See, this would have been the perfect point. If I'd planned this ahead of time, I should have like planted the seed of what I'll do in the future, so then you can actually look at the videos and, I don't know, what's something I can actually do. Look at the first word with a capital. No, you know what? I can't be bothered. I'll do it in the future digest or something. I don't know. When he reveals how the trick works, and then he himself does the trick, and it's very unsatisfying and satisfying at the same time. On one hand, it's unsatisfying because he does the trick. He does it better than the original video, and he doesn't reveal how he did it better. So it's both satisfying in that it looks really good and it's like better than the original video, but it's unsatisfying in that we'll never get an answer to it because he doesn't explain it. So I thought that was really cool. My final note is about how visual effects is something I love. I've used After Effects, going to videocopilot.net back in the day when I was like 10 years old, I think, like a very long time ago, back in like 2005 or so. Damn, that would have been younger than 10. I was very young basically when I got into it, and I thought it was really cool. I'd make like lightsaber edits and stuff. But basically, I bring this up because I feel like VFX is one of 4 paths through life, which I would be very happy doing. So one of them would be VFX. One of them would be animation and drawing, like something in that domain. I love drawing, even though I suck at drawing, right, and animation. But I feel like that I just love it so much whenever I do it. Programming, which is probably the path I'm going down now the most, or math, like just hardcore math. I just love solving problems like that. So I think that's another domain I could go down. So yeah, that's Captain Disillusion. Oh boy. All right. So next up we have accepted Mediocrity by YGG Studio. So this is 26 minutes long, and this was recommended by Kyle Entertainment. Oh boy, I wonder if I was too harsh when I was writing these notes. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, Jesus, I should have like held back a bit. I don't know. My first note here. I hate this video. I hate this video. I hate this video, and I don't think I can explain why I hate it. And I can't be bothered trying to structure these notes, so you're going to get a bunch of disorganized thoughts. All right. That's what you're gonna get. My first note is about how this is the most. If anyone listening knows Kyle Entertainment, I'm sure a lot of you do. This is the most Kyle Entertainment video of all time. Hating new anime and liking old anime. That's the first thing here. So the intro does something interesting, which is that she compares YouTubers to anime producers, where I guess it is the title of the video here and the entire point of the video, which is that both are defaulting to mediocrity, basically, because there's no pressures for them to aspire to anything more than that. I guess is one way of interpreting it. I'm not sure what her point is here, but yeah. So because I was frustrated, all right, when I watched this. So my next point, she obviously cares a lot about what other people think about the stuff that she likes. And me, I just don't care is the main thing. I'm sure you'll find some example of me complaining about like what other people think, but generally when I watch something, I watch it for myself. That's why I like watching, that's why I like the binge release of things, like instead of week by week, because I can just binge it all at once, and I don't have to have someone to discuss things with to enjoy something, all right? I love things, and I don't care what other people think about them. And my go-to example is like Ruby. I love Ruby, all right? I love that time I got reincarnated as a slime. I love Keijo, right? There's a lot of things out there where I'm like, I just don't care what other people think. I love it. But obviously she does, because she opens with an example, probably hypothetical is what I would probably say, of her sitting down with her mum and her mum laughing at the bad CGI of an anime that she wanted to watch. Like basically she brought an anime to her mum and her mum's like, oh, terrible CGI, look at this. And she's laughing. And I feel like this example is meant to convince me that mediocrity is bad, because I can't, like, mediocre anime is cringe, because when I show other people, they won't get it like I do or something, which is just like, I don't understand that at all. She talks about, what is this point? She talks about the stuff she likes as, yeah, so she brings up a few things that she likes, and she talks about them as world-renowned and respected classics. But to me, I'm like, who cares if something is well respected by others or is a classic, or like, what even is a classic? Like, who cares? It's the experience to me that matters when I'm watching something. But it's not really the direct point of her video, but that's what I got. Then I have a quote here. This film is the most watered down, basic standard action adventure children's movie that's ever come out of anything associated with Studio Ghibli. And that's not to say it's a bad movie. I'm just saying, where is the risk taking trying to make it classic? So I'm trying to understand, like, if it's not a bad movie, then what does it mean to be a classic? Like, is a classic at some measure of how much you like something, or is it something else? Because is it something that most people find to be really good? And then if it was, then I'd say I don't care. Like, I really don't care if most people find something good. As long as there's good stuff for me, I'm fine with it. I don't care if the majority of anime is bad, as long as there's stuff for me, you know? Not everything is going to be for me. Then I have another quote, because even though this show has a lot of clout right now, this is talking about Devilman Crybaby, I think, because even though this show has a lot of clout right now, it always has detractors. It has people who are down talking like the overall quality of it that would be happy if they had just tightened up the script a little bit, tightened up the presentation a little bit, made it actually as strong as Misaki's previous work, which is all visually stronger than Devilman Crybaby. I don't know why I pointed this out. It's just like quotes like this frustrate me, because it's like, really, who cares what people think about shows, you know? Just enjoy it. Then my next major note is about how this is inherently an offensive and repulsive video to me, but it's not because she's wrong. So the thing is that I agree with her, and I've talked about this in a previous digest. So I've wrote a good recent example for me is Berserk. I want a wild modern adaptation of Guts, Casca, and Griffith playing out the events of the Golden Age as kitchen workers in a fancy restaurant. But instead, what we've gotten in the past is just a bunch of mid adaptations of Berserk, which don't experiment and don't go all out or anything like that. They're just mediocre, right? So like Berserk is so popular, and I'm sure there's a bunch of immensely creative people who would be glad to experiment with Berserk and make something a quote unquote classic, but for some reason they don't, and it just leaves me wondering why. And that's the point of this video, right? But like the thing is, I agree, I agree, but it's just the way the video is framed is so repulsive to me. Like I just hate how it's framed, where it's putting aside the stuff about like what other people think about a work impacting what you think about it, whatever, ignore that. But just the way it's framed as though like this is what I'm trying to I wish I'd put more thought into these notes, but that's the inherent issue I have here. Let me go through more of this because it ties in with politics and stuff as well. It's tough to explain why. Let me see. She gives examples. So basically, I agree, is what I say. And then, but she gives examples that are fundamentally disgusting to me because it's very emotive, whatever. Because it feels like she represents a certain faction of the internet that will never be pleased, even if she isn't even associated with those people and has formed these ideas completely on her own. It kind of feels like I'm seeing a video from that community, which kind of repulses me. So a few complaints. She complains about CGI. And to me, I'm just like, what about Ruby? Ruby is like a CGI. It looks terrible, but I love it. I wouldn't want it to look any better. It looks perfect, even though a lot of people in the world would see it and be like, this looks terrible. This is objectively bad, But I love it. Like I love the mediocrity of Ruby. Anyway, complaining about background faces being inconsistent. I don't care, right? Complaining about stuff that's popular. Your Name, A Silent Voice, Devilman Crybaby. She complains about all of these. Saying that modern anime isn't bad, but classics aren't being made anymore. The anime of the old days, they were the best. It's just all these talking points I hate. And even if she isn't one of those people who tie all these together and portray this, it comes across that way, and I hate it because of that. It like repulses me. I guess it's the best word I can come up with. Repulses. I don't know. There's probably some better word. What's the other thing? At the same time, she also makes this a very general point rather than a specific. Yeah, I guess the other thing is she's another thing because obviously I made this point about Berserk and stuff, and I think another aspect of issue is that she's making this a very general point about all anime, or a bunch of anime, and I would never say that anime has a wide problem of lacking passion and creativity and attention to detail and stuff that makes things classics. Like basically she says like the 80s was the best, trust me guys, all right? And she goes through reasons why the 80s is the best, and I could easily do the same thing and just explain why the current era is the best. And I just hate how she clearly has this bias for the 80s. It's not even the bias that I have the issue with, it's just the fact that I know that there are people out there who truly do believe that the 80s was the best era, not because of good reasons, but because they were just, it's like the old days were good. And this ties in with the political belief of how there's a lot of people who think that, well, back in the day, those were the good days, but now everything is trash and everything is commercialized and the big corporations and we hate it so much and blah, 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 blah. And I just hate that outlook on life where you portray things as getting worse over time. And these were the golden ages back in the 80s. I hate that kind of, I don't like it at all. In this video, regardless of if they aren't doing that, it comes across that way to me. And as a viewer, it just annoys me. I'm sure there's other people who love this movie and this doesn't bother, not movie, Jesus, love this video and doesn't bother them, but it does me. What other thing? I got mad, I don't know. Streaming bad guys, that's some of the things she says. Adaptations bad guys, original things good guys. That's a very Kyle Entertainment thing, right? There's definitely some political parallel here to political content that I hate. I don't know what it is. It's like when someone has a political ideology that they want to promote. Yeah, this really does feel like a political video. Not political in that it's not conveying any political ideas whatsoever. But the way they portray this idea of modern anime being mediocre feels like a very, you could portray the same, if you had a different content in this video, the way it's portrayed is inherently political. even though the content isn't political in nature at all. I don't know how to. There's some video, some scripted video I can make about this, but I just can't piece it together yet. Then the final thing, goddamn, and she finishes off with the cringe. YouTubers have it so hard trying to be creative and successful right now. God, I hate this video. It's like, yeah, actually, this is probably the best way I could describe it. It feels like I'm watching a Twitter timeline personified or something. Like, it feels like I'm seeing a bunch of takes on media that I hate all bunched into one video. And that's what this is. But it's a well-made video, like in terms of editing and stuff and narration. The jokes are funny. But God, does it, even if it's unjust, and I probably should like it, it really is. I hate it. It repulses me. But I would like to watch more of her videos, you know. It was at least, it invoked an intense sense of passion within me, right? Next up, Subjectivity is Implied by Joseph Anderson, 14 minutes long. So this was also recommended by Kyle Entertainment. And this was an interesting video. I like this video. I would dare say a good video, potentially. Now, I also don't remember all these points. There's quite a lot of them. Well, it's not quite a lot, but it's quite confusing. So, he throws out a hype. Okay, let me summarize basically the point of this video is what I start off here by doing. He throws out a hypothetical about how you go to the movie with you go see a movie with a friend, and you go outside of the theater, and and you basically say, yeah, that movie was okay, and then your friend says, yeah, that movie was really good. And in this video, he says that you would never argue with them about how they're stupid for making such an objective claim about a movie because subjectivity is implied. They're not really saying this movie was very good or something. They're saying that I like this movie a lot, and the subjectivity is implied in that statement. Makes sense. So he then goes on to paint two camps of people and shows examples of YouTube comments in his comment section, which I thought was really funny and interesting to see how these two distinct groups of people can exist at the same time on the same video, both opposing arguments, but both kind of touching on the same idea here. So one group is the group of people who are angry at a video because it makes an objective claim. So instead of engaging with your claim, your objective claim, and like refuting it somehow, they argue with the way that you presented the claim by saying it's objective. So they say something like, stop saying something is good or bad, when in reality, it's just an opinion. You don't speak for everyone. You know, there's no objectivity here. And that's me. I do that, right? In these videos, which is funny. Then the other camp of people is someone angry that a video makes a subjective claim. So instead of engaging with your claim, once again, they argue with the way you presented it. So they'll say something like, stop using opinions to say something is good or bad. They're just your opinions, and you don't speak for everyone. All right, so that's like another way. And I'm not one of these people at all. I'm in the first camp firmly. So he frames this as these two people being on two sides of the same dismissive coin. So these are two get out of argument free cards where instead of refuting the points in the video, they refute the way you frame the things and dismiss you. So interesting. I feel like that's the point of this video. So my thoughts on this. So since I don't remember, I can't coherently remember this, I'm just going to read it out mainly and see what comes back to me. I generally agree that people making comments like that are dumb for videos where subjectivity is implied. That's it. That was my disagreement. He seems to imply, he seems to believe that subjectivity is always implied. And to me, that's obviously not the case. So my first thing is that I generally agree if someone makes comments like this on a video where clearly subjectivity is implied, then yeah, they're being dumb by not engaging in things. And I did go back because he gave examples of comments he'd received on the video before this one got uploaded. So I was like, let me go back and watch that video. Was he being subjective? Was he presenting things as overtly objective or something? And I think it's very clearly subjectivity is implied in the thing he was doing. And all these comments were crazy. I couldn't believe what they were saying. Anyway, maybe they're memes now because he published this video. Maybe people went back and went hardcore to meme on this video. I don't know. Yeah, so my big disagreement is that I don't think subjectivity is always implied. Sometimes it's obvious that people believe the things they are saying in videos are objective. And to say that you're being dumb if you point out that they're presenting their opinions as fact instead of ignoring that and focusing on their arguments, then you're just wrong. So I don't think let me say that again. So this Joseph Anderson in this video, he basically says that if you point out that a person is saying something is objective, as trying to portray something as objective. If you point that out as a commenter, then you're being dumb because you're not engaging with their points. You're just dismissing them because of the way they presented it. That's what this guy is saying. I think it's ridiculous, because if someone is framing something as objective and it's clearly not, then that is an issue. It's just ridiculous. Like the two things I have here is that if you just go and watch Destiny talk about the Star Wars prequels, where he will adamantly, there's no subjectivity in the way he frames things. There's no implied subjectivity. He objectively believes that the prequels are bad movies. So what am I meant to do? Am I meant to argue with him on an objective basis that I don't believe in, because I don't believe there is any objectivity? What am I meant to do in that situation? Am I meant to? Is it better to point out to him that things are subjective, and what are your reasons for thinking this is objective? It's better to query him based on the objective foundation for his beliefs than it is to target those beliefs because he believes them to be objective. I don't know if this makes any sense, but that's kind of what I believe. Another thing is listening to Moist Critical, or just Critical as I call him, talk about The Last of Us 2, where he believes his criticisms of that, there's no subjectivity implied. He is I think the objectivity is implied in his review, where he is trying to frame it as though his criticisms are objective. I feel like what this Joseph Anderson, what this video is talking about, is the types of video that he makes, and I make, and Kyle Entertainment makes, and Jarky Bacon, and everyone else. These videos where we're not making strong objective claims and actually not trying to present ourselves as objective. We just don't mention it. So things can come across as objective. And he spends a lot of time in this video talking about how what percentage of the time do we have to couch things by saying, in our opinion, I believe, things like that. And I completely understand why this is an issue for those videos, but I think there are a lot of videos that don't do that. They don't frame it that way. Maybe that's not what this video is intended for. It's not meant to be addressing people like Destiny and Critical and stuff like that who do try and present things objectively. But I don't know. It was a very interesting video generally. And I'm sure there's a lot of contradictions in what I'm saying. Feel free to point it out if you strongly disagree with me or anything. I'd be happy to read it. I'm sure I haven't thought this out too much. I'm mainly just reading my notes that I wrote a while ago. But I have another 2 side points here, which is that videos framed as being subjective are obviously... Yeah, so... Yeah, videos that videos that make subjective claims, basically, that frames the video as being subjective, are obviously fun to discuss. I like discussing videos where they present things in their opinion and stuff, because you get to play around in the subjective realm, and you can try and express to that person why something works for you, even if they don't see it that way. So there's a mutual balance there, where it's you're both open to understanding each other. That's why I like people who frame things with subjectivity or have the subjectivity implied in their videos. On the other hand, videos that are framed as objective, like Destiny discussing the prequels or Critical discussing The Last of Us 2, are not fun to discuss, because giving your opinion to them won't make a difference, because the person thinks there is a correct answer based on some objective foundation. They might say something like, obviously the dialogue in the Padme scenes is stiff. And what am I going to say to that besides saying, yeah, it's stiff, but I like it? And that's not going to change Destiny's mind. You have to target the objectivity in that argument, and say that I like it, therefore you can't say that it's objectively good because I like it. I don't know, something like that. I hope you get my point. Yeah, so presenting something as objective makes the person listening who disagrees feel very otherized. The video, if they framed it as something objective, like Destiny talking about the prequels, it's basically, this is the way things ought to be. If you disagree, you're wrong. You're an uncivilized animal who cannot see the light. Yeah, so I have issues with videos that frame things as objective. Whereas this video seems to imply that everything, even if you don't say it, even if you do say that something is objective, the subjectivity is implied, because nothing is ever truly objective. So I don't know. I don't know if I made any sense in this rant, but good video, made me think about a lot of things. Let me know how wrong I am in the comments, all right? So, Second last, I think, video here, kind of. So this is Meta Microvideos by Matthew Matosis. This is 33 minutes long, and again, recommended by Kyle Entertainment. So I don't have too many notes on this, purely because I haven't actually seen this before. I've seen parts of it when I was preparing for a debate, which never happened, about Chainsaw Man and taking a penny, leaving a penny, whatever. But I have seen Kyle Entertainment talk about this in his digest, so I think I basically knew all of these points before I went into it. And I think I've seen some Matthew Matosis thing. Maybe it only is this video. But yeah, generally he seems like an interesting, like, he puts a lot of thought into his videos, which I think is cool. So yeah, I've heard Kyle talk about it. His Irish accent, I think it's Irish, and his voice serves him very well. He comes across as very genuine and like worth listening to. He doesn't come across as like a trash YouTuber with like a fake personality or anything. He seems very genuine, which I think is really interesting. And he also kind of points it out at this. This is obviously a very meta video. Like, where he has that transition with a cough where it's like, and that's the cough I do when I'm like transitioning, or he has his voice duplicated a few times to be like, this is a video you're listening to where the things I'm saying are recorded, and I probably recorded it 3 times, and here we are playing them 3 times. Cool things like that. Yeah, so I have very little to say. There's like 4 parts I have a thing on. One is the clickbait. He talks about the pressure of a progression system, which I thought was really interesting, how people love progression systems. I love progression systems. I love like achievements and stuff. Like these are fun things. So he talked about how there's a pressure in the both economic and just societal pressure to adopt something like that. Because if you don't adopt a progression system, then someone's just going to copy your game, add a progression system, and they're going to succeed having your game purely because they added the progression system on top. So I guess it is a compelling argument. It's not an argument. It's a compelling Doomer take, I guess. Yeah, makes sense. An esoteric text on criticism. That's another one of his sections. So he basically I thought this was another interesting point. What a critic includes or leaves out of their reviews says as much about the critic as it does about the game. And the example he gave, well, this is an example mixed of what he gave and what I think, which is that no one reviews Sekiro as a racing sim because no one so far has thought of it as a good racing sim. Makes sense. Interesting. I'd never thought about that before. Here's a section called Unrelated, which is the leave a penny, take a penny thing, where if decisions in a game can lead to dire consequences, then you will treat the next game you play as though that is the case. So the previous game is leaving a penny, and the next game is taking that penny and running with it, basically. So another way of framing this, he says, is that if every film had a happy ending, then there would be no stakes because you always know it ends in a happy ending. Cool. I think it's really interesting. And the final thing is about, he says 7 years earlier. So I have a quote here. Oh, I think I disagree with this or something. So even the most immaculately crafted exploration of a game's standout elements could never substitute for actually playing the game. Yeah, so this was... I think he's obviously a gaming focused channel, so he's focusing on videos. So I guess I kind of expand this to the types of videos I make. I think I generally disagree with this, where I feel like you can portray the feeling of something purely by without actually having experienced that original thing. I think I do disagree with this, but so I said I technically agree that obviously you can't substitute something for something else and it perfectly conveying the feeling. That's obviously a nothing statement, right? But I think a review or description of something can obviously evoke stronger feelings than the original ever did. So I have a few examples, which maybe people will disagree with this, but outside of games, I think reaction videos can evoke a stronger sense of watching, of like emotions in something than the original ever did. For instance, I've seen a lot of like Flash and Arrow reactions from Blindwave, and I never saw the original. But I'm sure that and I've also seen, I guess I was going to say, I'm sure it would evoke a more, their reaction. The reason I stopped is the fact that I was getting more out of the reactions than I was in the original thing, so I don't know. Another thing is DBZA. There are so many moments in DBZA that I think capture the feeling of the original, even if it is completely different. And I think it just does it so well. Now that I'm saying this, I feel like I kind of missed the point of what he's saying, which is that a game is inherently different because a game you experience, whereas things like DBZA and reaction videos, you're getting the actual medium in the expression. He's talking about like reviews and stuff. I don't know. But yeah, my final one is about, I guess this one is more directly relevant, which is when Eric from Blind Wave describes what he likes about the prequels in Star Wars. He can describe it very well, and I can get like a really strong feeling from his like descriptions of certain scenes and be like, wow, I'm emotionally engaged by this story he's telling. More so than when I actually watch the scenes in the prequels. Like there are some scenes where he has such a strong take of it that it gets to me more emotionally than the original, even though it is the same kind of feeling. It's just even stronger in his description. So maybe that's my strongest argument. I don't know. And another very vague thing I put here, because I couldn't think of a specific example, which is that sometimes someone can describe a really funny scenario that they ran into when playing Minecraft. And I think the way they describe the scenarios can be more fun than actually living out those scenarios in Minecraft. So I don't know. I kind of disagree with this point, but I also see what he's saying. And that's Microvideos by Matthew Matosis. And the final thing I watched this month was various Destiny streams. I don't think I included this last month because there wasn't that many interesting stuff. For the month before, I had some stuff. This month was a very interesting Destiny month. I haven't actually got any notes for this. I'll just see what I can think of. So first was Kick or Keep, which is this series on Kick with Destiny and Karantos, which I love Karantos. He's a entertaining streamer, even though he's a bit crazy. So basically, they would get 10 guests, and they would debate like a topic, and at the end of each round, you vote to keep one person, and that person who gets voted to keep can choose to kick one of the 2 lowest voted people. And this was wild. He's had 2 episodes of this already. It's just insane. It's like people yelling over each other and being wild, and I enjoy it a lot. That's one thing. Another thing, he went on a few podcasts, so it was a lot of Destiny controversies, right? The first one was the Whatever podcast. I watched this live, which I rarely do, but I don't know, I thought it was fun to watch. It was like 5 hours long, and I watched the whole thing. I don't know what to say. It's really interesting seeing something like this, because I don't watch any of these Red Pill... I don't think I watch any Red Pill content, besides what I see from Destiny. And it was just interesting. It's like such an awkward environment where there's like 10 people at a desk, and there's all these really strong personalities that want to try and dominate the conversation. There's this random girl who's like making expressions in the background, which was funny. What can I think of? There's the girl with a rose in her hair that's like extremely autistic. She was interesting. There's the host guy who's like the most normal guy, not normal in terms of opinions or anything, but just the normal like demeanor. He seems like an introvert or something. He's like socially not the most like he's not the most charismatic person, I guess I would say, but it's interesting that he is the leader, like the main host of this podcast. You wouldn't think someone like him would be the leader. Interesting. But yeah, I guess that's that for the Whatever podcast. So yeah, next up we have Destiny on the Fresh and Fit podcast debating Rollo Tomasi, I think was his name. This guy, I have no idea what his name is. And Sneaker was also there for a bit, but he left pretty quickly. It was basically just Destiny versus these two. And the first thing to say is that this guy, Myron is his name, I think. He's just the Red Pill guy, host of Fresh and Fit, which is this like very crazy Red Pill podcast. I was surprised by how well he was keeping up with the debate, because there's like numbers and statistics and papers being cited all the time. And he was keeping up. He was like asking relevant questions to the points and keeping people on track. And I was like, Jesus, this guy is keeping up with all this. I certainly wasn't. I didn't care that much to keep up with it, but he did, and I was amazed. And yeah, it was also interesting how many studies, because apparently Destiny prepared for this like 2 or 3 days beforehand. So it was interesting to see just how many studies he'd prepared for this, and had a decent ability to recall them all, you know. It does make me question, because obviously when it comes to studies, most of the time you can probably find a study that agrees with you. So the goal is to find studies that are repeatable, or what do you call it, reproducible, with strong samples, and methodology seems sound, and there's no like obvious methodological flaws, and there's no like people arguing with it seriously, you know. I just wonder if, I have no idea, I wonder if Destiny particularly went to what these guys would cite and particularly sought out things that would oppose it, or if he took this approach of starting from the beginning and looking at the literature for all of these issues and trying to come to his own conclusion. I feel like in his mind, obviously, that's what he was doing. He wanted to come to the correct conclusion. He's not going to argue against something that he believes is false. But I feel like it is very easy to find literature that agrees with you. So I just wonder if he did that or not. But I guess I'll never know. It's just an interesting thing. It is very interesting to see people who aren't like scientists. Destiny's not a scientist or anything. To see them engage in like literature search and stuff, having no experience in it. I just wonder what type of approach he took. Yeah, it's very interesting. So, yeah, next up we have, I don't have much to say, but Faha, or whatever, she shows up on Destiny's stream now pretty often. I just want to say how wrong I was about her, okay? Initially she showed up and I was like, this is the most boring person I've seen in my life. It was the most cringeworthy. They had these call-ins from the viewers and she was like not saying anything, and it was the most cringeworthy thing I've seen on Destiny's stream. But yeah, then she slowly opened up over time. She's really engaging, and I like their dynamic together. And one particular thing I thought was really interesting was, like, she seems pretty intelligent and well-read, or maybe not. Maybe this is a deception, because at one point when she was talking about what was she talking about? It was trans brains, basically, like the gender representation of the brain. She was talking about basically the white matter structure of the brain. I don't remember if she was talking about mean diffusivity or fractional anisotropy. Basically, some measure of the white matter structure in the brain, and she was talking about how there's differences between genders based on that white matter structure. And I was like, wow, that's really impressive, because that is if I was to, because this is the field of research I do work in, which is artificial intelligence applied for the white matter structure of the brain. So I was just surprised that someone who isn't in that field at all knows of these terms, and things like that. And I was like, wow, okay, I guess she has done a little bit of reading into this. I'm sure Destiny had no idea what those terms were. He seemed kind of confused, but I just thought it was really interesting. Maybe she just read some article that was like published through some news website. I don't know, but I was impressed. So I thought that was cool. Anyway. Then the last saga here on Destiny's channel this month was his saga with the Thorpes, basically. This crazy family who clearly has a lot of abuse going on and crazy stuff. I thought the highlight of this was basically Destiny had a conversation with the dad and the daughter. And it was it was basically an interrogation, but it was so engaging to listen to, because it's basically Destiny asking all of these questions to get these facts that the Thorpes are claiming. And he would write all these facts down, and he would find contradictions in them and basically push them on the contradictions. And over time, he was finding more and more contradictions and he was getting them in very uncomfortable positions where they couldn't lie themselves out of it. It was really interesting and engaging to watch. I would recommend this probably to people, if you're not a Destiny fan. It was interesting. Only the part where it's like those three together trying to ask, where Destiny's probing about their relationship. I thought that was really interesting. It's, if you like JCS psychology, like the video about like interrogating those criminals and stuff, I thought this was really, it was like a more not realistic, a more like because you're seeing it on a stream, it's more like real, I guess. I don't know, I thought it was interesting. So yeah. Oh, and then afterwards, it was also interesting how Karantos came in the stream. This is like Destiny nerd stuff that no one cares about, but Karantos came onto the stream, and he finally proved himself, because I've always loved Karantos, right? He doesn't have to prove anything to me, but he proved himself to the audience firstly, and I was starting to see all these positive messages and stuff like, good, that's my boy, right, Karantos, where he would be calm and he'd like have a nice talk with Destiny about what the interviewer just had, and he'd be quiet at the right moments. Like, this is my boy right here. But anyway, yeah, this is Destiny. And this is my month's digest. So now's your chance to give me suggestions. Movies, anime, TV shows, games, books, YouTube videos, whatever, manga, I don't know, anything. Suggest whatever you want, all right? If you want to suggest the entirety of the A Song of Ice and Fire franchise, go ahead. But I'll probably only watch it, or almost certainly I will consume it if it follows these rules, all right? Now, there's been a lot here. For instance, Dr. Stone didn't fit in any of these, all right? So there's a chance I'll still watch it if it's not here. But anime, 12 episodes or less. Movies, if it isn't a comedy. TV shows, 6 episodes or less. And games, less than, or around 6 hours to finish maximum. So yeah, thanks for watching. I think this was a shorter one. How exciting. See you. Is there anything I have to promote? I guess I got the Mushoku Tensei videos, alright? If you're interested in Mushoku Tensei, go watch those. Yeah, see you next month.